but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there. You can feel it.
Get a bone out the bed and start to move your bones. Wake up with WURD and Solomon Jones. WURD. You better wake up now.
Good morning, everybody. It is time to wake up. This is Wake Up with WURD. This morning, you're waking up with Brother Shamari on Wake Up with WURD, normally with Solomon Jones, but he is on vacation. I'm sure you already knew that, and I have the privilege of sitting in today in the 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock hour for today's episode of Wake Up with WURD. And it's all good because I'm always inspired by one of my favorite movies, The Matrix. So when I hear the voice of Morpheus, who I believe is the actual star and the hero of The Matrix, as is any good teacher, you are a reflection of how you're taught and who you're taught by and what you're taught. And I agree with Morpheus. We all know something's going on in the world. We might not know exactly what it is, even though sometimes I believe we do. We just don't want to admit it because now we have to hold ourselves accountable to what we know. But we know something's going on in the world. And oftentimes, like right now, there's some pretty big stuff going on. And that's what we're going to focus on today. You know, I ponder a lot when I sit in about what kind of energy or tone I want to bring. Do I do my normal Shamari thing? Or do I try to acquiesce and kind of fit into the space? And, you know, I'm old now. I'll be 56 this year, so I'm going to be who I'm going to be. And one of the things I want to do today with today's time is kind of get us, hopefully, with either a clearer or an expanded sense of what's going on in the world. So we might talk about some things today that normally we don't talk about on this radio station or on different shows, but I'm going to take what I call a global diasporic global African village focus on some of the things that are happening to us as Black people. So we're going to focus on some international news stories, but I think they all have some things in common that we need to begin to pay attention to. In the 8 o'clock hour, I will be joined by my good brother Butch Slaughter and another good brother, Lynn Washington, whose voice you're familiar with weekly on Wake Up with WURD. He's going to join us in a conversation that's really about repairing the breach. We're probably going to lens it through the perspective of what's going on in Philadelphia and what has gone on vis-a-vis the MOVE organization, the MOVE family, the May 13th bombing. But really the conversation is really overall about our need to repair the breaches. The divisions are in our community that I feel right now are causing us to not actualize ourselves as a collective village, but in many ways as different fractions and factions and individuals instead of a collective village approach. So we're going to talk about this need to repair the breach. Some might call it apology, some might call it atonement, some might call it avenging. Whatever the word is, I focus on actualizing, and I believe that we need to intentionally repair some very clear divisions in our community. We have to do, in order to overcome our trauma, we got to start telling the truth. We got to start trusting one another again. We got to get in attunement with one another so that we can begin our atonement process. And our atonement process might begin with an apology, but it definitely requires us to actualize. And what is it that we have to actualize? That'll get into our 9 o'clock hour. And that is the fact that all across the globe, all people of different groups and ethnicities, nationalities, they are trying to assure their and their children's future at the expense of our children's future. I want to say it again, because sometimes when you're fighting to understand all of this craziness that's going on in the world, one of the things that we have to understand is that there's been a global covenant. You can call it racism, you can call it anti-Blackness, whatever name you want to give it. But the global covenant works a little bit like this. By any means necessary, I want to make sure that me and mine win I, as the adults of any group or ethnicity or nation state, I want to assure, under the context of territorial imperative and other things, that I can guarantee, or at least create the foundation for a future for me and mine, myself and my children and their children, and the beautiful ones not yet born. And one of the things that the world has, quote unquote, conspired, seeming in consensus with, is that that will be done at the expense of Black and African people across the globe. And I want us to begin to really look at that today, because if we don't understand that fundamental mantra, that fundamental covenant that's guiding a lot of what we call racism or oppression or exploitation or white supremacy or anti-Blackness, if we don't understand that global covenant, some of y'all might even want to call that a conspiracy. I'm not scared of that word, so be it. But we don't understand whether our children are dying on our doorsteps, or whether we're talking about issues in Haiti or Burundi or Mozambique. I don't know if you're aware, but right now, just yesterday, America dropped bombs in Somalia. Again, under your Democratic president that everybody wanted us to elect, Joe Biden. And if you recall, most of us probably never even heard of Somalia until about 20 plus years ago, when under another Democratic president that everybody said we needed to elect because our future depended on it. Same thing happened. Mogadishu. Y'all remember that. There's a big world out there, y'all, and sometimes we forget how big the world really is because we only focus on the trauma and the issues that we face inside our homes and in our communities. And what I want to do today is expand the lens a little bit and bring some of these global dynamics that are happening right in front of our faces. Sometimes because it's not reported on the news, we might not know about it, we might not think about it, we might choose to ignore it. I want to bring all of that into the room today, the good, the bad, and the ugly, because I believe that it's time for us to begin to tell the truth and know the truth, because as they say in many spiritual texts, the truth will set you free. I don't know that the truth by itself sets you free, but I do know that the truth is an important prerequisite for the freedom process. And that's why today on Wake Up with Word, we're going to do some local, some global, some personal, some professional, some political truth telling. Again, we're going to talk in the 7 o'clock hour, this hour, about what I call locality. And just some things, dynamics we need to know that are happening all across the diaspora that might inform, or in my opinion, should inform how we're moving in the world. Under the pretext that it's important for us to understand that every other group, all the groups that we look at and that we idolize, when we always talk about other groups who are doing, collectively good, and we point to these model groups, we'll talk about the Jewish group or the Asians or the Latinos or whatever the group might be, whatever that, the LGBTQA, we'll point to a group and we'll talk about how much better they're doing than we're doing. And one of the things I want us to understand is that those groups are operating with an intention. They have a vision. They have an agenda. They have a declared purpose. Guess what, y'all? They have a vision. And when you all know what happens for people without a vision, all of your spiritual texts tell you, without a vision, you perish. Why? Because vision then gives you purpose. You find your purpose in the hope that you will actualize the vision. And our people right now, because we don't have a clear vision, our young adults, our elders, our village lacks a purpose. Without a purpose, you lack the processes necessary to create or bring into being that vision. See how this works? And that is the function of the village. So no vision, no cultural vitality, no collective vocation of the people, no village to bring forward those people in that collective vocation, catalyzed by the vitality of the culture, in the achievement of the vision. So everybody acts like individuals, and we do not get the victory. It's time for us, in the spirit of our ancestors, of our elders, of ourselves, of our children, and the beautiful ones not yet born, to engage in the vision, vitality, vocation, to engage in the village building so that we can bring victory towards our people. Because again, so as you get it clear, there's a war going on. I'm going to just call it like I see it. People are fighting for their and their children's future. And right now, the global covenant is that they're going to do that and have been doing that at the expense of us and our children's future. If that's an okay dance for you, because again, you got to participate in this dance. You know, it's almost like the cha-cha slide or the tango or the bop. You know, whatever the dance is, it takes two, baby, as Marvin Gaye and them, you know, Tammy Terrell would tell you. It takes two. And right now, we're a little complicit dancing the anti-black dance of our death. I'm going to say that again because I like the way that sounded. We're a little too complicit, dancing along in the anti-black dance towards our death. It's time for us to say, you know what, I'm tired of this. I'm not going to do this dance anymore. I'm going to do some of my own steps. I'm going to bring my own vitality, my own vision, our own sense of our village, our own vocation and collective cause, so that we can define our victory on our terms. That's the conversation I'm looking forward to having. That's a conversation I always have. That's who I bring. That's the spirit and the soul of who I am. I don't want to compromise that because I'm tired of seeing us dying on our own doorsteps. There's another thing going on that I want us to talk about, which is why this atonement thing is important to me. Right now, all across this globe, black people are dying. And we're dying at the same time that there's an important narrative that we got to understand and counter. And that narrative goes a little something like this. We are dying and we have been messaged or positioned as unworthy of compassion as we are dying. And that's why all these labels that people throw around become really important. Our discourse and our dialogue and the way we have discussions has to change because our language is actually designed to destroy us. And so when we freely throw around these labels, I don't care if it's anything from toxic masculinity up to terrorist, to your children, when you begin to discard them because maybe they do, experience drugs or they're thugs, these names, the N-word, the B-word, all of these labels, all of these words are designed to create a lack of empathy and compassion. If you've listened to me before, there's a term called disempathy, which is the opposite, the counter movement to empathy. So pay attention now, because in all of the places where Black death and suffering are happening, even in places like West Philadelphia, right? Philadelphia is really having an epidemic level of what you all are calling gun violence or Black homicide. But it's really Black self-destruction, right? And part of that is because the language that we've allowed ourselves to be programmed by programs us against ourselves, and it programs other people against us. So literally now you have people who are literally watching Black people waste away across the city of Philadelphia through death, through narcotics and opioids, over addiction, things of that nature. And it's very hard to garner the support, the empathy, and the compassion, because the narration and the reality are in such a way that people are literally coming to the conclusion that we deserve what we get. But more importantly, we are coming to the conclusion that we deserve what we get. I remember doing a circle with some leaders of a local recreation center, and we do something, we always call it storying around. And we start a story with just a young Black male. We usually name him Rashid, and we just have him wake up, brush his teeth, say hi to his parents, and go off to school. That's our story. That's how we started. And we just put a little drum rhythm to it. And we just ask everybody to just add an element to the story. There has not been a time when Rashid, a little Black boy from Philadelphia, gets autobiographical, right? Because this is we're creating the story in the moment. And that Black people who are responsible for Rashid, be they his peers, his parents, the adults that work with him, the teachers that teach him, Rashid always suffers. Rashid usually dies. Rashid usually gets stabbed or shot. People in Rashid's family also get stabbed or shot. So much so that we begin to process that and ask the question. I remember asking this sister, she had to be in her maybe 50s, worked again at a recreation center, local recreation center, one of the many recreation centers right now, when you pay attention, where Black young shootings and death are rampant. And we said, you know, how come? And we let her know every time we do this story about Rashid, something traumatic happens to him. Why is that? She said, well, y'all named him Rashid. You should have known that was going to happen. I want us to let that sink in. Because again, I'm less concerned often about what other people think or what other people do. That's why you rarely hear me talk about news stories and other people and Joe Biden and Trump. And I don't do it because that doesn't matter. What matters right now is that we as our own people have brought into the narrative of anti-Blackness. We've brought into the narrative that in many ways, just because we are Black, we are destined to suffer, and that our children are destined to die. We brought into this idea of our inferiorization, that excellence can never be the standard for our people or our youth, that power is actually a sin. We're scared of our own vision in many ways. We lack our own cultural vitality. We lack a collective vocation to bring victory to our people. We lack the village through which to do that and have privileged individuality at the expense of the village. And that is why it has become very difficult for us to attain our victory. I'm not by myself on our journey today. I'm going to rely heavily on my good sister friend and producer of the day, Quasa. So what I want Quasa to do is actually introduce herself. I mean, she needs no introduction. Y'all hear her or know about her on a regular basis right here on Wake Up with Word. But when we come back, I want to do some top stories, and I want Quasa to actually run us through it, because I asked her to do some homework, y'all, because there's a lot going on in the world, and I'm amazed that if we watch our local or mainstream news programming, and even if we listen to our Black talk radio and news outlets, very rarely are we talking about what's going on in Haiti or Mozambique or Tanzania or Cuba or South Africa. There's a lot going on in Burundi, Somalia, and places all across the globe. And though they may seem distant and far away, they actually all work under a common cause. When we come back from commercial break, I want to read that common cause into the record before we go into these different local highlighted hotspots of what's going on. I want to offer, hopefully, maybe a framework to let you all know that maybe there's some intentionality behind all of this Black death, suffering, and division that we are experiencing today. Quasa, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. I get used to waking up this early in the morning, but I'm trying to find my energy. I feel pretty good, so I'm looking forward to this. How you feeling?
Yeah, I'm feeling good. Yeah, I'm for me now, I've been at this for, well, a while now, as far as being the morning producer. But at the same time, though, usually around this time, around 6:30, I'm like, okay, now I'm amped, I'm more awake, I'm getting in the groove there, and so I'm feeling good, feeling positive today.
So when we come back, I want you to let our listening audience know the segment that you're going to. I'm gonna sit back and sit in my chair and chill while you're moderating what I feel is a very important conversation. So I want you to kind of introduce that dialogue and let people know what that focus is going to be in our 9 o'clock hour. But then also I want to dive into some of these stories and some of this context setting. So I look forward to this conversation. And of course, as always, listeners, if you want to join in, hit us up at 215-634-8065. If you have some thoughts about atonement, if you have some thoughts about the future for our children and young adults, that I don't think we've done a good enough job creating that vision, so that I don't think our young adults and our children see themselves viably into the future. I think that's a concern, something we need to atone about and do something about. And just the idea of locality, does it matter? Are we really missing out on anything when we don't know what's going on across the global African village and the diaspora? I believe so, but some people might say it's irrelevant. So much going on right in my own house, at my own doorstep. I don't care what's going on in the world. That's a viewpoint. Let's talk about it. Let's discuss it right here on Wake Up with Word. Again, 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. I'm Brother Shamari sitting in for Brother Solomon Jones today. This is Wake Up with Word, and we will talk with you after these messages.
Do you have what it tastes to solve Her's Flavor Mix Mystery? One chip, 3 classic Her's flavors, thousands of possible combinations. Pick up a bag of Her's Flavor Mix Mystery and make your guess online today. Your guess could win you $10,000 and a year's supply of Her's. Visit Her's on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for more info on how to enter. Solve the mystery. Break out the Her's. No purchase necessary. Legal residents of the 50 United States, D.C., 18 years of age and older. Ends 8/31/21. To enter and for official rules, including odds and prize descriptions, visit campaign.rtm.com/Her's Flavor Mix Mystery / void where prohibited.
For the past 10 years, Comcast has been helping students get ready. We've connected 5 million students from low-income families to low-cost, high-speed internet. We're working with both nonprofit partners and city leaders to create over 1,000 Wi-Fi connected live zones in community centers nationwide. And now we're committing $1 billion to reach 50 million people with the connectivity, skills, training, and the resources they need to succeed in a digital world. Learn more at comcast.com/education.
Are you an educator looking for a life-changing opportunity? Youth Build Philly Charter School might be the home for you. Apply to Youth Build to join a family of educators dedicated to learning and growing with young people. Check out current opportunities at youthbuildphilly.org or follow them on social media at YouthBuildPHL. Join Youth Build today. Youth Build is now accepting applications for the class of 2021.
When times get dark, we can't see the help that's all around us. Maybe you're not sure how you'll make rent, or you lost your job. When you don't know where to turn, let 211 be your guiding light. Our guides are ready to connect you with the help you need.
211, how can I help you?
Call or visit 211.org. 211. Get connected. Get help. A message from United Way and the Ad Council.
Join Nick Taliaferro Wednesday, July 21st at 5 p.m. for a very special simulcast conversation on WURD and WVON Radio in Chicago. Hosted by Word's own Nick Taliaferro and WVON's Matt McGill and Kimberly E. Goen on the impact of violence in Philadelphia and Chicago. That's Wednesday, July 21st at 5 p.m. exclusively on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com. Simulcast on WVON. 2 of the only black-owned talk radio stations in the nation join forces for a powerful and timely conversation. This was brought to you by Einstein Healthcare Network. Now, a traffic update on WURD Radio.
This report's sponsored by ExpressPros.com. Pretty jammed up I-95 southbound from Academy down through Bridge. There's an accident there being worked on off to the left. Then once it passed at Allegheny through Girard, some volume there. Northbound side, that's a jam ride from Girard up the Bridge. An accident there also being worked on. So a jam ride both ways, I-95 through Philadelphia. Westbound Vine, busy Parkway through the Schuylkill Expressway. Schuylkill eastbound Boulevard through Girard. There's slow westbound delays. Broad to pass Young University through South. Heavy again from King of Prussia out the 202 through work there. Southbound Boulevard, Route 1 delays 9th Street down to Wissahickon through construction. 55 northbound Deptford into 42, a jam ride. Looking for a job? Contact Express Employment Professionals and be part of their national hiring event with one application. Express connects you with multiple employers, never charges a fee. Go to ExpressPros.com, find your nearest office, and call Express today. For more traffic information, log on to SIGAlert.com. Jim Bachman with your Philadelphia area traffic.
Now, a WURD weather update. Here's NBC 10 First Alert meteorologist Bill Henley.
Hazy sunshine this morning, a chance of strong storms this afternoon, a high of 88 degrees. Clearing tonight and beautiful weather ahead for Thursday and Friday. A pleasant breeze tomorrow, low humidity, a high of 84 degrees. Lots of sunshine, another comfortable day on Friday, up to 85. I'm NBC 10 First Alert meteorologist Bill Henley.
You're listening to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, independent black media.
Good morning, and welcome back to Wake Up with WURD with Solomon Jones. But today, you're waking up with Brother Shamari. And I want to talk about some global stuff, y'all. I really do, because I believe that the global and the local are connected in very powerful and intentional ways that we might not consider. So before we jump into our news stories and I just want snippets from around the globe so that we can understand what's going on, because if we rely on our local mainstream news coverage, we might not get these stories. We might not get these details. But I want to take you back. The year 1993. The newspaper, the New York Times, particularly the New York Times Magazine, the author, distinguished historian, and journalist, Paul Johnson. The date, April 18th, 1993. Now remember that year, 1993. 93 was a big year. If you remember, I said earlier, Mogadishu, Somalia, Bill Clinton. Yes, U.S. intervention in Somalia, same year. I'm going to give you another big year, 1994, the year after. A famous publication that we were all told not to read because it was racist came out. It's called The Bell Curve. I'm a student of policy, y'all. I can tell to you right now that if you paid attention in 1993 and 94 to this article in the New York Times Magazine and to the book, The Bell Curve would make very clear to you what is happening at a domestic, local level for black people in the United States. The Bell Curve was a very powerful, prescriptive, descriptive policy journal. A lot of what's going on as it relates to domestic terrorism, as it relates to education, the recrafting of the education and the underclass, all this kind of stuff that we're dealing with. Go back and study again the Bell Curve, particularly the recommendations and prescriptions that were in the 1994 publication called The Bell Curve. The Bell Curve was written by Charles Murray and Richard Herrnstein. Check it out. But a year before that, April 18th, 1993, Paul Johnson penned these words in the New York Times Magazine. He said, the title of the article was "Colonialism is Back and Not a Moment Too Soon." 1993. That is 28 years ago. How do I know that? Because my son was born in 1993, and he'll be 28 this year. See how easy that was? It wasn't that I'm a math genius. It's just I have markers that help me anchor. Here we go. Line number one. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I just want to read enough for you to get context on the fact that sometimes things we say, oh, that's just a conspiracy theory or that. Nah, this is just something that was said in a newspaper. Because what I tell you is that people with power always signal their intentions, because that's the hubris of power. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do to you. And I'm going to do it because you can't stop me. And I'm going to do it until you can stop me. That's the way this works. It's not really that complicated. Sometimes we make things complicated. Here we are reading into the record. We are witnessing today a revival of colonialism, albeit in a new form. It is a trend that should be encouraged, it seems to me, on practical as well as moral grounds. There simply is no alternative in nations where governments have crumbled and the most basic conditions for civilized life have disappeared, as is now the case in a great many third world countries. Just in case y'all don't know this, third world countries, that's where we live. That's Africa. That going there, every nation state up to 54 in Africa, soon to be 55, because there's always a new little nation state that's fighting for quote unquote independence. That's the Caribbean, that's Haiti, that's Cuba, that's all of these places that all of a sudden are miraculously in the news. Second paragraph. Third world governments have long sought military assistance from the advanced powers to put down internal rebellions. But a historic line was crossed when American Marines landed in Somalia without any request because no government existed. The intervention, made with the approval of the United Nations Security Council, was a humanitarian attempt to supply some kind of protection for life and property in a country that had shown it could not govern itself. I want y'all to hear that, because in these contexts, property is as important as black life. As a matter of fact, property is more important than black life. So that's why they said a humanitarian attempt to supply some kind of protection for life and property. The old-style United Nations approach of sending officials to hold talks with the opposing factions was visibly demonstrated to have failed when an angry Somali mob threw rubbish at the walls of the United Nations compound, thinking that the Secretary General, Boutros Ghali, was within. So the article goes on to really talk about how all across Africa is crumbling, and that the key to intervention is recolonization. And the article goes on to say that this time, in the form of the recolonization, it won't be seen as an imposition, because the very people themselves will be asking for the US or asking for Britain or asking for France to come in and save them, because, and this is a quote unquote, let's face it, some countries aren't fit to govern themselves. Just want to put that out there for context. Because again, when you know that, and I was familiar with that back in 1993, right? This is why people would say I'm a conspiracy. That's my lens. I understand that there's been a declared agenda, a very public declaration of the intent to recolonize the African continent and quote unquote other third world countries of important strategic interest to the United States. Put that in your pipe. Same author, now different publication, Wall Street Journal, October 9th, 2001. And if you all remember, 2001 is a very big year. This is literally 1 month after the World Trade Center bombings. Same author, Paul Johnson. The answer, title of the article, the answer to terrorism, ? Colonialism, period. So we're 8 years removed from the first one I just read. But again, the idea emanating and circulating in policy circles is about colonialism. If you don't understand my point, my point is real simple. America is a colonial empire. It's a colonial enterprise. Much of Western Europe is colonial empires, colonial enterprises. The answer, whether you want to call it gentrification, colonialism, it does not matter. It's the same answer, whether it's domestic or international. The answer to black people and their quest for freedom is always colonialism. Let me read from the text. America has no alternative but to wage war against states that habitually aid terrorists. That's why terrorism, whether it is the bombing of Somalia whether it's Nigeria, whether it's domestic terrorism here. That's why you will always hear that word associated, because it's the cover and the context for the colonization that is impending. President Bush warns the war may be long, but he has not perhaps yet grasped that America may have to accept long-term political obligations too. For the nearest historical parallel, the war against piracy in the 19th century was an important element in the expansion of colonialism. It could be that a new form of colony, the Western administered former terrorist state, is only just over the horizon. You have to understand this to understand what the experiment was in Afghanistan or Iraq or the other places across the globe that nobody really talks about. So again, I just wanted to put that out there for context, because now with that context to understand that for the last 20, 25, 30 years, powers that be have been organizing and thinking about. They have a vision, right? That's why their people aren't perishing. We don't have one. That's why our people are perishing. We don't have to agree with their vision, and we shouldn't, because their vision is at the expense of our people. But I want you to understand that a lot of what we are seeing happening across the globe has a context. Whether you were aware of it or not, this is the Wall Street Journal, very powerful mainstream. There's not a secret conspiracy statement. It's the New York Times Magazine. Again, mainstream, not a conspiracy statement. And if I had time to really teach this, I would read a third article into the record that brings this home for you. But you can read it on your own. Everybody out there is pretty smart. Go back. I think the year was 2014. The journal, the magazine was called Philadelphia Magazine. The title of the article was Being White in Philly. The author was Martin Huber. I'm going by memory. By the end of the show, I'll go back and get that for the record, and hopefully Quasar can help me. Being is same thing, same, only from a local perspective, same declaration. Philly is unfit to govern itself. The black neighborhoods of Philly are very dangerous for those of us who want to send our children to Philly to go to college, who want to live or move back to Philly because all of the amenities that the city offers. There is precarity being white in Philly. So we have to change the nature of Philly and its neighborhoods in order to accommodate this new urban desire that white people have to move into the inner city, or what used to be the inner city. Y'all call this gentrification. So what I want us to understand is what we're experiencing now, whether it's international or local, is the function of a particular group's vision about who they are vis-a-vis our people and our presence, who they are vis-a-vis our places and spaces, and their intention to colonialize or colonize those spaces or places, be it local or global. It is the same conversation. So it's time for us to engage in a local and global conversation about our collective vision, our collective vitality, our collective vocation, our collective village, the role of the individual in that village, so that we can assure victory for ourselves, for our children, and the beautiful ones not yet born. Hopefully I've made the table. We'll talk about some hot spots and highlights going on across the globe in our next segment. And I'm wondering your thoughts about the local-global dichotomy. Does it matter? Do we need to become more of a diasporic-focused people if we're going to actually protect Black lives and Black spaces? My contention is yes. But I want to hear from you. Your thoughts. 215-634-8065. Again, that's 215-634-8065. Toll free, 866-361-0900. This is Wake Up with Word. Brother Shamari sitting in today for Solomon Jones. Looking forward to talking with you right after these messages.
The Broad Street line.
Georgetown High-Speed line.
I ride the bus.
Regional Rail every day.
Usula Línea Azul. I ride the trolley.
Into, out of, and all around the city.
SEPTA is the hometown way to go.
Plan your trips at iseptaphilly.com.
If you or a loved one is searching for a home care agency that provides care both needed and deserved, call My Independence at Home at 215-921-2277. Featured in Oprah Magazine, My Independence at Home is committed to quality, compassionate home care for the elderly and adults with both physical and intellectual developmental disabilities. Call 215-921-2277 today for a free in-home consultation or visit us on the web at myia.org.
Between family dinners, bedtime stories, and study sessions, Pico knows that life never stops moving. So if you need help paying your energy bills, there are financial programs available, like the Customer Assistance Program, or CAP, that offers a monthly credit that can lower your gas and electricity payments. Learn how Pico can help keep your life moving with CAP. See if you qualify at pico.com/CAP.
Are you looking for a job? WURD has got you covered. We just launched a brand new job portal featuring jobs from some of Philadelphia's leading companies and arts organizations. If you go to the portal right now, you will see jobs from WURD Radio, the Kimmel Center, Her Foods, Always Best Care, and more. Apply for a job today. Go to our livelihood website at wordworks.com. That's WURDworks.com and click jobs.
Now, a traffic update on WURD Radio.
Busy ride and sponsor. This report sponsored by ExpressPros.com. I-95 southbound, that's Jam Ride Academy. Down through Bridge, an accident there still being worked on off to the left. Northbound side, you're jammed from Girard up to Bridge. An accident there in the construction area has been cleared, but still now a big jam this morning. Westbound Vine Expressway, 8th Street through the Schuylkill. That is busy. Schuylkill westbound delays broad to pass Young, heavy University through South Again City out to Belmont. Eastbound, it's 202 to Belmont, heavy again the Boulevard, rating through University. Southbound Boulevard, Route 1, you're jammed 9th Street down to Wissahickon through construction. 55 North Deptford into 42, a busy ride. Looking for a job? Contact Express Employment Professionals and be part of the national hiring event with one application. Express connects you with multiple employers and never charges a fee. Go to expresspros.com, find your nearest office, and call Express today. For more traffic information, log on to sigalert.com. Jim Bachman with your Philadelphia area traffic.
Now, a WURD weather update. Here's NBC 10 First Alert meteorologist Bill Henley.
Hazy sunshine this morning. A chance of strong storms this afternoon. A high of 88 degrees. Clearing tonight and beautiful weather ahead for Thursday and Friday. A pleasant breeze tomorrow. Low humidity. A high of 84 degrees. Lots of sunshine. Another comfortable day on Friday. Up to 85. I'm NBC 10 First Alert meteorologist Bill Henley.
You're listening to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, independent black media.
And welcome back. Wake up with Word. Good morning, y'all. We waking up a little bit. This might be a little heady, but it's good. I think we need to know it. I'm going to stay in the space. Again, if you want to join us, I'm just wondering, for our listening audience, locality is what I call it. I think that the global and the local, just like the individual and the systemic, go together. I think that there are many, many global stories that are actually local or locally relevant to us. I think that if we can study what's going on in other parts of the globe, we could really get a sense of what either happened here that influenced them or what's happening there that influences here. And that's why I believe that we got to take time to expand the palette of our informational diet, as my Baba Doug Jones used to say. I'm just hold this up real quick. Again, this article from 1993. This is the Village Voice, again, a reputable, somewhat liberal leaning, but reputable. Right? It's not about conspiracy theory stuff. There's a picture on the front of two Belgian soldiers burning over a fire as a form of torture. And they're supposed to be peacekeepers, right? Somalian. It's 1993. So again, all of this is coming full circle, mainly because we haven't paid attention. We haven't done the work necessary to intervene on our own behalf. People who we hope to intervene on our behalf are not doing so because the narrative is that we are unworthy of intervention and deserve in many ways what we get. That's why these media narratives are important. The words and the language that you use are designed to other. They're designed to create distance, to create a lack of affiliation and affinity, such that the people who are suffering end up having to suffer by themselves and on their own because they can't rely on support, right? That's bullying 101. You got to render people as bystanders or merely witnesses. Some of them become promoters of the violence. Some become participants. Some become the planners of it. But all of that works against intervening. And right now we're really struggling because we don't even have enough Black dignity to intervene collectively on our own behalf, let alone to hope or wait for other people to intervene on our behalf. And all across the globe, there are these hot spots and fires that are going on that I think we need to pay more attention to. So in that vein, I'm going to go back to Quesa for a minute, and I know she did a lot of homework on some of these articles. So I'm just wondering, Quesa, if you could let people know some of these hot spots that maybe they can begin to pay attention to, some of these local stories that are happening right now that are influencing both our local and our geopolitical scene as Black people across the diaspora. All right.
My apologies. Were you talking about? I had just answered the phone. I apologize, Shamar.
Oh, sorry about it. Yeah, I just want you to give a sense of some of the hot spot, the articles that you researched. And even if you don't go into details about the article, just what's going on in that spot and just saying the name so that people maybe can Google and do their own research about how hot and on fire the African, quote unquote, third world countries are that have been discussed.
So honestly, in doing some of this this research and taking a look at what's going on, I actually found what's happening in Cuba to be kind of the most, well, to me, I guess, more dynamic, because the particular story that I looked at is actually out of the Washington Post, and it talks about how Afro-Cubans have essentially been disenfranchised in Cuba, and really talks about all the things that they have been going through. And it really is kind of a deep conversation about some of the I almost want to say intersectionality, right, of how, we as African Americans view Afro-Cubans and vice versa. I know that one of the folks who were kind of at the forefront of this conversation, I'm just trying to scroll through so I can give the proper information, but sorry, I'm just trying to scroll through on here so that I can tell you all. I had it right here in my hand. It's on my hand here, and I'm looking at it. But we're really kind of talking about the role of Afro-Cuban activists in the protests, and they have been casting doubt about the government's narrative about racial equality. So there's a gentleman, his name is Juan Papier. I know I'm probably saying his last name incorrectly, but he's part of the Americas at the Human Rights Watch. And so just been talking about how for years the Cuban government has pointed to human rights violations in the U.S., particularly to abuses against African Americans, as a way to actually divert attention from the human rights violations in Cuba, which I actually found to be very interesting about that. You know, because I'm sitting here and I'm just like, well, they're using our struggle as African Americans to divert from what's going on with Afro-Cubans. That's very interesting to me. And also they're saying that Afro-Cubans are protesting and are being repressed, and it now poses a great challenge to the narrative that Cuban government has been using for years. So you have a lot of Afro-Cubans here in the United States, and they've been experiencing racial inequality basically there at home and here, so that's why they're trying to bridge the gap in regards to the conversation.
And that's interesting. Hopefully we'll have some time to come back to this. I think that one of the things I would want us to pay attention to is how, because that's the same narrative that's happening in South Africa, right? And again, that goes back to this thing is what they try to exacerbate are these internal contradictions. And that's why our next segment is really going to focus on atonement, right? Repairing the breaches, because if you look at South Africa, if you look at the Haiti conversation, if you look at the Cuban conversation, if you look at what's going on in Tanzania, again, the premise is these countries are unfit to govern themselves. So if I can create a premise of internal strife and division, that then justifies my intervention. And so we're going to begin to hear narratives of internal division. Now, I'm not saying that there is no internal division. I am saying that the colonizer is going to prey upon that narrative to divide us and other us from ourselves, such that we don't see ourselves as the solution. So when you're going to listen to what's going on in Haiti, you're going to listen to what's going on in Cuba, you're going to listen to what goes on in Colombia, you're going to listen to what's going on in Mozambique, what's going on in Nigeria, what's going on in Ethiopia and Tigray, what's going on in Somalia. What you're going to hear as a recurring theme in all of that is this idea of internal division, civil war, civil strife, black on black violence. That's what's happening right here in Philadelphia, right? As the means of saying that warrants our colonial intervention, be it the police force or NATO or the UN or mercenaries or whatever it is, it's the colonial power. I now, because of their inability to govern themselves, because of frictions that oftentimes I've created and exacerbated, I now need to send in my military or my paramilitary or my policing force so that we can restore order to these people who don't know how to govern themselves. Whether that's the local narrative, the regional narrative, the national narrative, or the international narrative. I hope people pay attention to the fact that this is what's going on and this is what we're part of. I'm trying to work Jacob from Alani into the conversation real quickly. Jacob, how are you?
Good morning, Brother Shamari. My up-to-date African warrior, brother. How you feeling today?
Doing well, man. Trying to do what I've been called to do to the best of my ability.
I hear you, man, and that's what I'm talking about. You know, really what you talking about, man, you talking about freedom is universal. Because we look at you're talking about all over the globe now. You know, like you said, some people might say, well, we got local problems. Yeah, that's true. But when you look all over this world, it seems like freedom is universal again. And it look like everywhere and every tongue, the human being to say, give me free, okay? Get your colonial foot off my neck. Because Africa, Cuba, Japan, et cetera, this colonial power, even in Islamic countries, the colonial powers took over, right? You got kings and stuff, all this whole kind of stuff that they ordained. So again, I see this here. I know this here, Brother Shamari. The whole world is watching this new African, the descendants from America's enslaved Africans, right? 400 years under this whip, under this ugly thing. I mean, when you look at it, and you was exposed, you're talking about 1993, where they're just telling you, like you said, it ain't even hidden no more. What this Republican Party is doing about white racism. They ain't hiding it. They letting you know, look, I'm going with white supremacy over America being more perfect in its human thing, as that contract said, that, you know. But the bottom line is the whole world watching us, Shamari, and we, like you said, failure is not an option. You know, we can't lose this battle, right? So
you're right about that, my brother. You're not gonna be able to dig out from this.
No. So that's why, again, we need brothers like yourself to wake us up to certain aspects of the battles that we have to fight in our everyday life here. Because, like I said again, the whole world's watching this new African that's here in America, and we just got to keep on doing, as Reverend Joe said, doing what we got to do. We got it.
Brother Jacob, I definitely appreciate your call. I appreciate the sentiment. I appreciate the fact that, you know, because I know that what I say and what I'm focusing on is not for everybody, but, you know, I gotta weave the pieces together to the best of my ability, because we need to understand that we're in a global and local struggle, that our answer is a global and local village. And through that, we got to have a global, local vision, collective vitality, collective vocation, so that we can build the village, stop being adversarial individuals, so that we can assure a victory for our people and our children and the beautiful ones not yet born. Same message. I don't care whether it's in the morning, in the afternoon, on Sundays, on Fridays. That's all I know. I'm a one-note, somber kind of dude. Hopefully somebody picks up on that note. Coming up on a commercial break, when we come back, we're going to shift gears, but not really, and start talking about atonement and attunement, y'all. Because if we don't repair these internal breaches and contradictions, that is what the colonizer preys upon. That's the entry point. That's the entry point to the portal. And then they go in and they just rip the cleavages. They create more, bigger breaches and cleavages, so that we no longer trust, we no longer tell the truth, and we no longer engage in the toil necessary to bring forward our victory. We got to start repairing our internal breaches. Looking forward to our conversation with my good brother, Bruce Slaughter, and my good brother, Lynn Washington, on the other side of these commercial messages.
Hi, this is John.
Hi, this is Juanita, owners of JD's Auto Body and Painting. We're located at 6300 Wayne Avenue, right there at the intersection of Wayne and Washington Lane.
We really like to thank all you WURD listeners for the support that you've given our business, and we really hope to see you in the future.
JD, tell them about our products and services we have.
We have a new state-of-the-art paint shop along with our body shop and detail shop. We can help you with the dents and scratches from the winter season.
Come to JD's Auto Body and Painting. Come on out and check us out. We're still honoring that WURD 10% discount. Give us a call, 215-848-5949. Again, 215-848-5949.
Thanks again for supporting our business. We really appreciate you.
See you at JD's Auto Body and Painting.
Hi, this is Samantha from Leo's Apparel on Germantown and Lehigh Ave. Open from 9:30 to 5:30, Monday through Saturday. We have the hottest selection of boys' dress suits and casual sportswear for boys, sizes 2T to 20. Men, let me tell you, we got in a large shipment of straws from Stetson. We have new linen and dress suits. Biggest selection of Stacy Adams shoes. Get an extra WURD 10% discount.
What's up, Philly? It's Solomon. With so much uncertainty surrounding the upcoming school year, now is the time to take charge of your child's education and give them the tools to make learning fun and safe. Check out Commonwealth Charter Academy, which can make a difference in your child's life. Commonwealth Charter Academy, or CCA, is a K-12 public cyber charter school with nearly 20 years of experience providing a flexible, stable, online education in the comfort of your home. Enroll today at ccaeducate.me. Your child will receive 1. A world-class accredited education streamed directly into your home at no cost to you. 2. A laptop, headphones, assistance with accessing the internet, and learning materials all provided at no cost to you. 3. A safe learning environment with no bullying or security concerns. Join the nearly 2,500 students from Philly who already attend CCA. The school year begins September 8th. Enroll now at ccaeducate.me.
Need to replace your Social Security card? In most states, you can request one online with a My Social Security account. A My Social Security account gives you secure access to your personal earnings history and benefit status. You can also get a proof of income letter, estimate and apply for benefits, and more. Save time. Go online. Open a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount. Social Security. Securing today and tomorrow.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
This is WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Black Talk Media. You're listening to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, independent black media.
And welcome back. Good morning, y'all. Okay, 1 hour down. We're in the 8 o'clock hour. Y'all need to know I'm normally asleep by now, so I'm up. I'm ready. Not by now. I'm normally asleep at this time. So this being up and talking and having to act like I'm up, it's kind of a new energy for me. But it's gone good because I think we're talking about some important things. So welcome back to Wake Up with Word. With your host, Solomon Jones. Solomon is on vacation. I am Brother Shamari sitting in today. The powerful Renee Chenault Fatah will be picking up the helm for the rest of the week. And I think we might even have a visit next week by Pastor Waller and many other luminaries, because you got to pull out the heavy hitters when you're sitting there for Solomon Jones. So I'm a little lower on the bench. I get my one day and then I go back to my normal existence. But since I'm here, I'm going to talk about some things. So the first hour we talked about some global stuff, y'all. Hopefully you caught the message of that. Sometimes we don't really get access to the information that allows us to have a global perspective, but I was trying to set a context that a lot of what we're experiencing right now, even though it's 25, 30 years removed, because again, when you're trying to control the globe, you got to think 25, 30 years, not tomorrow. People who are trying to control billions and trillions of dollars don't get to think one day at a time, right? That's reserved for the survivors. That's reserved for the people who are the recipients of the trauma that's trickling down on us, right? They think 25, 30, 50 in 50-year increments because they're thinking about how to hold on to what they have and how to make sure they can pass what they have to their children and their children's children. Different vision, different mindset. That's why we perish, and right now they're prospering because they have a vision to maintain and attain. And we just have a vision to take one day at a time and survive. We got to change that mindset. And one of the things I also wanted us to understand that the global is local and the local is global. So we are our brothers and sisters keepers. We need to start acting as black brothers and sisters all across our city, all across this nation, and indeed all across the globe. And so pay attention to what's going on in the world, because some of what has happened there is going to be happening here shortly. And some of what has happened here is happening there or will be happening there. There's a reciprocity in global management that we need to begin to pay attention to. So there's no accident that what's going on in Haiti and Ethiopia, Tigray, Nigeria, Mozambique, Tanzania, Burundi, South Africa, Colombia, Cuba, North Philly, West Philly, because West Philly right now should be looked at as one of the most hotly contested gentrification or recolonization zones in the nation. Just like we're talking about all those other people, if you don't understand what's going on in Philadelphia right now, and particularly West Philadelphia, under the aegis of a vision that the University of Pennsylvania and Drexel and many other players have for this region of our city, and understand how the Black death and dysfunction that you're seeing in particularly West Philly right now relates to their vision of what they see as West Philly into the future, the white West Philly, like they see the white Philadelphia. Then I'm just doing my job. I'm laying it out. One of the things that's important for us to understand in all of this is that what is preyed upon, and y'all know this from the saying, divide and conquer. What is preyed upon is internal division. Before I can extract millions of slaves from the African continent, before I can colonize all of Africa except one country, and that is Ethiopia, before I can render Africans all across the globe in the name of a diaspora or the Ma'afa and have them in Haiti and Cuba and Colombia and Bahamas and Bermuda, before I can do that, I have to prey upon the internal divisions that exist within a family, within a community, within a village, within a nation, within an empire, and I have to exacerbate those contradictions. So we're going to have a conversation about that today. One of my favorite songs by Fela is Go Slow, Go Slow. This is one of those go slow conversations because it has a lot of layers, a lot of sentiments and feelings, indeed a lot of positions and factions. I don't want to do this as tabloid journalism, but I also feel that it's an important dialogue that responsible people have and begin to have. A lot of times we are victimized by the stuff we sweep under the rug, the stuff we lie about, and when it comes back, and it will come back, it always comes back harsher, fiercer, stronger than it would have been had you dealt with it in the moment that it needed to be dealt with. And that's why we're about to have a conversation. Understand, this conversation is about attunement, atonement, truth, and trust. We're using several examples. One of them is something that's going on in our city right now. And, it has been going on in our city. One of the reasons, if you're familiar with myself and my brother Butch Slaughter, who will be introducing himself lately, good brother Lynn Washington, who we have on the phone. Every year for the last few years and on a regular basis, WURD Radio has done something on May 13th, 1985 to really educate about, commemorate, pay respect and homage to what happened in our city. One of the most traumatic events in our city and in probably the world, if we actually put it in its right context, was the move, the terroristic assault on the Move House on Osage Avenue. We're still living 30 plus years removed from that with the traumas, 35, 36 years removed from that with the trauma about that. It has impacted Philadelphia in very powerful and significant ways. Most of you all might be familiar with just recently what went on with the University of Pennsylvania, the finding of them holding bones and teaching classes with the bones, causing the public health director for the city to resign. There's stuff going on right now that people may hear about there's a podcast that's out, a documentary that's out. This is stuff that is happening. And at the end of the day, the major message is we have to embrace the power of atonement if we're going to move into avenging and activation for actualization. So we want to have a conversation about the need to do that. Atonement to overcome the internal division that is preyed upon, that facilitates the divide and conquer strategy necessary for local or global colonization. Hopefully with that setup, people are clear about the conversation we want to have. So I want to take a back seat for a while, and I'm going to introduce my good brother, Ulysses Butch Slaughter. He's the co-author of Why Children Hate Us. I see the banner in the back. Cool book, man. I like that book. as well as many other offerings. And on the phone line, we have esteemed journalist whose voice you hear on a regular basis right here on Wake Up with Word. That would be Lynn Washington. So, Lynn, are you there?
Yes, Shamari. Good morning. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing well in yourself, and I see Brother Butch is here. So I want you all to weigh in number one with, from the perspective of atonement and all that we know that's going on. And again, we're using the MOVE family and the MOVE organization and the MOVE issue here in Philadelphia as the lens for what I'm hoping is a big conversation around atonement and the need for us to embrace that in Black communities, because if we don't, the internal divisions just exacerbate and they become actually something that we can't even overcome. We can't even get to the real work sometimes because we're so enmeshed in trying to overcome and deal with these internal contradictions. So I'm going to start with you, Lynn, and then you, Butch. Just your thoughts about this conversation about atonement. Is it important? Where does it fit? And we'll go from there. So let's start with you, Lynn.
Well, specific to the MOVE, it's interesting. You were talking a few minutes ago about the two universities in the bottom of West Philadelphia, Drexel University and the University of Pennsylvania. The man that became known as John Africa, Vincent Liepert, at one point he was involved in an effort in the Spring Garden community to stop what was then called the encroachment of Penn and Drexel into that area. And now we're talking about, the late 60s, early 70s. And to think that, 50 years plus later, we're still having issues around this. Atonement is always necessary. That helps raise up a civilization. So I'll just say that as an opening, and then we can go on more, because Butch is much more enjoyed talking about atonement than I am.
You know what, and I agree with you, but before I shift from you, because I think you raised a key point, and I really want you to kind of stay in that space for a while, because I think that what you're raising is what I'm really trying to piece together, and sometimes we just don't jump into it and talk about it. So I don't want to put words in your mouth, so I would like you to expand upon what you dropped, that jewel there, about the relationship of the Drexel University of Penn agenda for West Philadelphia, and kind of where the origins and the origin story, like they got Black Widow is out now. Everybody's doing these origin stories when it comes to superhero. Let's talk some origin story stuff and just put some more color on that context, because I think that the Penn Drexel agenda for West Philadelphia impacts a lot of what's going on in West Philadelphia, and I don't think we delve deeply enough into that.
Well, absolutely. I'm not originally from Philadelphia. I moved here in 1970. And when I moved here into Philadelphia, and actually my first apartment that I lived in Philadelphia was on the corner of 33rd Street and Powelton Avenue, right across from what would become the first MOVE compound. Back in those days, that was West Philadelphia. You kind of heard some talk about University City, but it was just West Philadelphia. Now, University City is, according to some people, all the way out to 52nd Street. So there was a plan, and they took years and years and years, and they executed that plan. Just a few weeks ago, I was in the area, and at one point there was a high school, University City High School.
Oh, my God. Every time I drive by there, my heart sinks. There were 3 schools literally on that land, and all of them are gone now.
Wow, yes. And there's this big apartment complex that's gone up on one section of it. I mean, I'm looking, it's like, I don't believe this. But there's these long-term plans to take certain pieces of land, and it seems like it fits a pattern. The property values go down. People can't get insurance. They can't get, mortgages, refinancing, but other people can. People who have no jobs or who have jobs that would not justify the mortgages that they're able to get. And so West Philadelphia started transforming. At one point there was a community called the Black Bottom around University of Penn and Drexel. all of a sudden, all of those houses were vacant and torn down. We hear so much about Ruth Wright Hare and the great educator, and rightfully so. But her and her father are perhaps the first father-daughter combination to get PhDs from the University of Pennsylvania. Her father, a banker and a scholar, Richard Wright, not the author, but another right. Richard Wright, he actually, his PhD was actually a follow-up on Du Bois' study of the Philadelphia Negro, and this was, Wright's one talked about the Negro in Pennsylvania. But I'm bringing all this up to say that they used to live on 34th Street. That's where they lived, between Market, I think Market and either Chestnut or Walnut. Now you don't see any residential properties there, properties related to the university. So these universities have been stretching out, encroaching, recycling, changing areas and the demographics that's in it. And it's to the detriment of the people who live there, and ultimately a detriment to the city itself. Because, we're getting to the point now where, I don't know, Philadelphia may not be able to afford itself where these rents and everything are going.
Yeah, we'll definitely delve a lot more into this because I think it's the crux of the conversation. But I want to jump to you, Butch. You were introduced as one who's an expert in this home. And one of the things I really, it's funny because, I've known you for a while now and I've seen your journey. And one of the things that I thought was very powerful, it was an interesting moment even in our friendship was when it became clear to you that having to deal with atonement and the internal disruption that was going on in your family as a result of your story with your father killing your mother, like that became a mission for you. And it was very clear that you had come to the conclusion that it was something, it's almost that moment when, in the Bible, Jesus got to go into hell and deal with the devil, because you got to do that in any hero's journey in order to come back and stand in your mission, right? And I think that internal contradiction, in many ways, while it was unresolved and unreconciled, it tore at you. It made you a very challenging brother to be around. You had an image of Slaughter, Sergeant Slaughter and all of that kind of stuff. And going through that reconciliation, you can see the difference before and after. And that's why I believe you're such a strong advocate for the power of atonement. So can you just talk a little bit about that and how not dealing with these internal ruptures eats away at the soul of people, of families, of communities, and why we need to deal with this?
So like Lynn, man, I'm not from Philadelphia, but I always say to people that I was born in Chicago, but I was raised in between Philadelphia and the city of Chester. And when I say I was raised in these places, this is where I was reborn, so to speak. The people in Philadelphia, the Ed Robinsons, the Mattie Humphreys, these are the people who raised me in Philadelphia. And so Mattie Humphrey had this thing, and I'm sure some people will remember Mattie Humphrey. She was at WBS. She was an attorney, and she would use the term degrees of captivity. Degrees of captivity. And that term always struck with me. She said, we're living in degrees of captivity. And until we can reconcile from one degree to the next, we're going to be living way outside the core of what we can be. So we have to keep graduating into these spaces, and there's some work that goes along with it. To me, man, when I look at what my father and I were able to do and the necessity of that internal work. My father killed my mother, Shamari, you know that. And I remember, I'll never forget what he said to me as we were going early in the stage. He said to me that he didn't know anybody else. He didn't owe anything else. He had paid his debt to society. And I said to him, society don't even know you. I'm your son. You haven't said anything to me. You have not atoned with me. And so if families are the threads in our communities, if the family can be torn at, then the community can be torn at. Right. And so I also looked at my role as something of a middle passage between my father and my children. And I recognized that being in that space, if I didn't find a way to connect those two generations, to put that back together, then there was going to be a chasm, and that I was the one who was doing it. I took responsibility for the fact that I was keeping my children over here and I was keeping my father over here, and that I was spewing hate in front of my children against my father, and that was not going to work. It just was not going to work. And it also was not going to be the best way to remember. And I say remember, put the relationship of my mother back in, right? There was nothing honorable about the way I was treating my father. Some people would say, well, he killed your mother. And I'm like, no, it's deeper than that. And we, like you said, go slow. We got to go slow here. It's deeper than that. My mother's name was Clarice, which means clarity. And I always think about there's some clarity that is needed here. And I would turn to my children and I would look and go, wow, all I got for them is a horrible story right now.
Right.
All I got is a horrible story. I need to switch this up. So
let's stop right there, because I think that's right there. Because I think that we as Black people live in that space where we give a lot of privilege and power to our horrible story. And I am saying that hopefully by this point in 2021, we got to know, I don't care whether reparations, I don't care whether we're talking about MOVE, I don't care whether we're talking about the Black Panthers, I don't care whether we're talking about our own family dynamics and what's going on in the streets right now. Just proliferating a horrible story and telling the truth about trauma is not enough, because oftentimes that story is not predicated on the truth. We're telling stories, but we're leaving the truth out of the story. And that is really what we want to get to. So you all, Butch, you're an esteemed journalist. You've done some great work in publishing and interviewing, and Lynn Washington, esteemed journalist and lawyer. So when we come back, I just want us to have a dialogue. I don't want it to be me asking y'all questions and y'all responding. Let's just throw some dialogue off of each other, because I think the dialogue and the deliberation is real important for us to move forward. So we're going to go slow. And again, listening audience, if you want to join in our conversation, 215-634-8065. Again, that's 215-634-8065. Toll free 866-361-0900. We're talking trauma, truth, trust, attunement, and atonement as the necessary building blocks for our path forward. Can we overcome and really reconcile our strivings without dealing with our truth? That's what we're exploring right here on Wake Up with WURD with Lynn Washington, Brother Shamari, and Butch Slaughter, and hopefully you, right after these messages.
Support small, Black, and Brown-owned businesses by joining the Diverse Procurement Collaborative, a community of business leaders committed to supplier diversity. Get engaged at chamberphl.com.
The holistic colonoscopy, no IV sedation. Your colonoscopy is due. You don't have someone to drive you home. You don't want to drink the PrEP. You don't want to be sedated with the Michael Jackson drug propofol. Does that sound like you? Call Blake Gastroenterology at 215-849-4902. Visit the website www.jsblake.com and make your appointment today. Drive yourself home after the holistic colonoscopy.
For the past 10 years, Comcast has been helping students get ready. We've connected 5 million students from low-income families to low-cost, high-speed internet. We're working with both nonprofit partners and city leaders to create over 1,000 Wi-Fi connected live zones in community centers nationwide. And now we're committing $1 billion to reach 50 million people with the connectivity, skills, training, and the resources they need to succeed in a digital world. Learn more at comcast.com/education.
What is dedication?
My daughter started making necklaces. She makes what we call affirmation fashion. I tell her every day that your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. And if there's anything better than being beautiful, it's being smart. If there's anything better than being smart, it's being kind. And reaffirming that every day is our method of making sure her chin never drops. My dad wasn't around, and I remember riding a bike and falling off and cutting myself, and me never just wanted to get back on it. People ask, how your children learn how to ride a bike, and you didn't? I didn't teach them. I just created an environment where they taught themselves, and all I had to do was be there.
That's dedication.
Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Want the latest in Word swag? Check out the shop tab on WURDradio.com. Hoodies, tees, and more in a variety of colors. The shop tab on WURDradio.com. Show the world that you're all about black. Talk media. Now, a traffic update on Word Radio.
Good morning. This report sponsored by ExpressPros.com. 95, still the trouble spot here in Philadelphia. Southbound side, you're still jammed up from Common Avenue down through Bridge. Earlier accident finally clear, but still heavy through that construction zone. Now, northbound Betsy Roster Bridge, here's jammed there as well this morning. An accident there also has been cleared. Westbound Vine Expressway, that jams 8th Street out to Broad. Accident there is off to the shoulder. Schuylkill eastbound 202 to Gladwin. Busy Boulevard to Spring Garden. Westbound heavy Broad to Passyunk. Again, there to south. Busy again from the Boulevard right after Conshohocken. Southbound Boulevard Route 1, that's jammed from 9th Street down to Wissahickon. 55 northbound Deptford in the 42 busy. 42 northbound 168 through 295, also a slow ride. Looking for a job? Contact Express Employment Professionals and be part of their national hiring event with one application. Express connects you with multiple employers, never charges a fee. Go to expresspros.com, find your nearest office, and call Express today. For more traffic information, log on to sigalert.com. Jim Bachman with your Philadelphia area traffic.
Now, a Word weather update. Here's NBC 10 First Alert meteorologist Bill Henley.
A warm and muggy morning with lots of hazy sunshine. Then this afternoon, strong storms, potentially severe thunderstorms, and a high of 88 degrees. Tonight, it all clears out. Gets really comfortable for Thursday and Friday. 65 tomorrow morning, 84 the high, with lots of sunshine and a pleasant breeze out of the northwest. Another beautiful day Friday. The humidity stays low, up to 85 Friday afternoon. I'm NBC 10 First Alert meteorologist Bill Henley.
You're listening to Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, independent black media.
Join WURD for the Summer Freedom Neighborhood Love Tour. This year we celebrate West Oak Lane, Mantua, North, West, and South Philly. Tiffany Bacon will broadcast live from a different neighborhood each Friday from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. Our next stop is North Philly's Penrose Playground, 1101 West Susquehanna Avenue. That's 1101 West Susquehanna Avenue. That'll be on Friday, July 23rd. Enjoy a special feature on the Summer Olympics. Meet special guests and stand with WURD. Be a part of the movement to amplify the voice of the black community. Show your support and join or renew your full WURD membership on site. Join us as we broadcast from the Recreation Center at Penrose Playground from 10 a.m. to 12 noon on Friday, July 23rd. Show WURD, show yourself, and show Philadelphia, Black Philadelphia, some love this summer. Welcome back. So wake up with WURD. With today, Brother Shamari sitting in for Brother Solomon Jones. Solomon is on vacation. Sister Renee Chenault Fatah will be in the helm or on the helm Thursday and Friday. And then I think we have some more special guests, including Pastor Reverend Waller next week as well. Welcome back to our conversation on atonement. Again, I wanted this to be a conversation. All of us are kind of, we do media, we do journalists, we teach, so we know how to ask and have a dialogue. I don't necessarily want this to just be me asking questions and you all vibe on our questions. So we have Lynn Washington on our phone lines. We have my good brother Ulysses Slaughter with us on Zoom. If any callers want to join in our conversation, hit us up at 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. I said go slow. And I want to do this. I'm going to be bold enough to dip my toe in this water. Behind the scenes and in front of people's faces, if they're paying attention, there's a lot going on in our city, particularly as it relates to MOVE and the MOVE family. I think that in many ways, again, everything local is global. But when we talk about Philadelphia and we talk about MOVE and we talk about May 13th, 1985, in many ways, most of that happened in West Philly, right? Powhatan Avenue. When we talk about Osage Avenue, these are West Philadelphia locations, West Philadelphia neighborhoods that are at the center of this global story. And even as we move 30, 40 years removed from those incidents that people are familiar with in 1978 and 1985, there are still ramifications that are happening as we speak. And I just want your thoughts about whether something as basic as we're talking about, like atonement, where would atonement, or how does atonement fit into addressing internal, within organization, within family organizations, within the dynamics of a city? How would something like atonement play out and benefit this process? Because when people hear the word, I think that they associate it maybe with the Catholic Church. I think Black people associate atonement, if at all, with what happened at the Million Man March. That might be the first and only time we actually really use the word in any significant way. So I'm just curious as to why you all think it's important and relevant that in the context of what we're talking about and using the lens and perspective of the MOVE family and MOVE organization, but also knowing we're having a bigger conversation. Why atonement? Why does atonement matter? Let's start with you, Butch, and then let's work our way to Lynn. And then after that, I'm just going to ask us to have a conversation and keep the vibe flowing.
Shamari, I think I was saying earlier that if we are threads in the material of our community, threads in the fabric of our community, then each family strengthens the fabric of our community when they atone. When there is harmony in every individual house, we then have an opportunity to strengthen the fabric of our community. As long as we've got tattered threads in that fabric, we're going to have a problem. And so family for family, this needs to be reconciled. We need to atone. We need to be able to address one another. And I say this all the time, man, justice is very intimate. I know that what happens in West Philadelphia, what happens in our families, I know that other people see this, but justice is intimate. That means that it has to start at the point of its strongest pain. You got to start at the point of its strongest pain. For me and my father to do what we did ultimately influenced a lot of other people. They looked at it and they went, wow, right? But it had to be authentic and true between us in order for it to matter. So all of the Dr. Phil show and the Oprah Winfrey, all that stuff didn't matter if he and I were not true to one another in working. You can do all the shows you want to do, but you got to be able to do it with your family deeply, intimately first if it's going to matter outside. It's not going to work unless you're just trying to put on a show. And there are too many lives at stake for us just to be putting on shows, man.
So talk a little bit, Lynn, and then as well. You know, I think that when people hear the word atonement, the first thing they think about is apology, and then they say, well, an apology is not enough. And I really want us to delve in and talk about, to me, if you do it right and you do it intentionally, how deep a process atonement really is. So I'm just wondering, how do we get people to understand that, you know, it takes a level of courage and commitment, skill and capacity and capability to really even engage in atonement. And it's necessary to do, because if you do avenging or you do try to build something and actualize without this atonement thing, it's likely going to crumble and come back and do more harm than good as we move forward. Lynn, your thoughts on that?
Well, Butch had raised a word that's very pivotal to any discussion, atonement, justice, and that's truth. And if we can't be true to facts, if we can't be true to reality, if we can't be true to ourselves at either, you know, the micro level of the family or the macro level of society, we're not going to move forward. Atonement, you know, one of the definitions is reparation for a wrong or an injury. And America, the macro, as well as the individuals, so many individuals in America have never atoned for the wrong and the injury of the racism that is embedded in the law. We talk about the incident, the horrible incident of May 13th, 1985. And in so many ways, you know, in terms of systemic, what the system didn't do, wasn't, and I would argue still has not been atonement for that. But because we have never atoned, we never atoned for an incident that took place in May, I think it was May 18th, 1838, when a group of racists in the city of Philadelphia burned down a building that was built by people who were opposed to slavery. And that building is located, ironically, or was located where the WHYY, the public broadcast facility in Philadelphia, is located, and right across the street from the U.S. Convention Center. You know, this facility that extols the Constitution and all of its rights and freedoms and all of that. But that was a building that was built without the participation of black businesses, black contractors, and for the better part, black workers. People were out there protesting that. Now, if you try to find that in news accounts, you won't, because that was not news that most of the news entities in the city of Philadelphia felt was important to cover. That the building of a building to extol the Constitution was done in a discriminatory way. So, you know, until we start recognizing truths and realities, we'll never even approach a realistic discussion on atonement.
So I want to work a call into this conversation, and then we're going to go to commercial break. And I want you all to, when we come back, I really want you all to weigh in deeply on this, because I've heard both of you say something like this in a myriad of conversations that we've had with Lynn being a guest on several conversations about MOVE in particular. But this is a general conversation. I've heard you both really talk about when you don't tell the truth, when you don't engage in this internal repair process, it opens up the gate for other people or other entities, often adversarial, to come in and take control of the narrative. And then they can do with the story what they will. And I think we're seeing that play out in so many ways at so many levels. And when you skip over this important process, it really is the portal where the division can be cracked open and turned into warfare, open warfare almost. When we come back, I really want to weigh in on that from a perspective of the law, from the perspective of journalism, how important it is that we engage in atonement such that we can control and tell the truth about our narrative, because if not, we're literally handing our adversaries the weaponry through which they can do even more damage. So before we go to commercial break, let's go to Tracy, North Philly. Greetings. Tracy, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
How you doing?
Good morning to everyone and everything. Listen, I was hearing what you said, and we understand, you know, what's going on around the city, and definitely about what happened to the MOVE people. But today, we weren't about regenifying and all that. We might not be here to regenify nothing if we continue to have the criminal shooting. Today, I'm devastated that a pregnant woman was shot in her head. You know, and it's crazy. Like, the mayor, it's like he don't care. And, like, our people need to stand up and be down City Hall and do something about this. And it's not our people really doing all the killing and stuff, the shooting and stuff like that. It's different other ethnic groups that's doing it. And, like, if we don't clean up Frankfurt and Kensington, our kids and stuff going to school innocently is going to die.
Yeah. But why do you think, Tracy, that's the mayor's? I mean, I'm not exonerating the mayor by any sense, but I do think we always skip over a part
it's
that.
not community, but right now, it's like they asked him to do a state of emergency. He refused. You know what I'm saying? Like, we need to bring some people in to get a hand on it, and then we can take.
Tracy, let me ask you a question. Every time a mayor of a city in this context, because this has happened before, I hope y'all do know that. And the last time we went to these officials to ask for a state of emergency to help us deal with what was going on in our communities, we ended up sending more black men to jail under the auspices of the 3 strikes and mandatory minimums and Bill Clinton that any history. Like this whole issue we have right now where the absence of black males in our community is a result of us going to ask for a state of emergency declaration from the federal government and local governments. Why do you think that a state of emergency 25, 30 years later is the way forward for us?
Well, this is my thing. Hello?
I'm listening. I guess it's a question that he didn't want to answer. So I didn't hang up on you, Tracy. You hung up on yourself. But I want our people to add, and I'm not supporting the mayor. I'm saying that, hey, we got to do this, y'all. And then when you take the onus upon ourselves to deal with our village and all that has to be atoned for and avenged and dealt with, all these other external factors will fall in line to that vitality. They're going to respond to your vision, your vitality, your work, your vocation, your village support to bring forward your victory. Without that, you end up whining for other people to take over the narrative, which is what we're talking about. Why would you go and sacrifice your purpose to someone else to come in and solve your problems? We know how that ends up. Have you been not listening to everything I'm talking about? When you ask for other people to come in and resolve your internal contradictions, we know how that story ends. Come on, y'all. Let's walk into our own humanity and manifest, actualize, and negate the things that are within our power to do. That is our purpose. That's what we're supposed to hand to our children. That is what we have been negligent in doing. Get up off of your butts and be human again. Coming up on the commercial break, when we come back, let's continue the conversation. Stay tuned.
At Bank of America, we believe in the power of action. That's why we've expanded our efforts to advance racial equality and economic opportunity with an additional $1.25 billion to drive impact.
I'm Jim Dever, President of Bank of America, Greater Philadelphia. My teammates and I are proud of our ongoing partnership with Urban League of Philadelphia. Together, we're connecting more people to new skills and better jobs. What would you like the power to do?
Bank of America, N.A., member FDIC, equal credit opportunity lender.
Stage Door, focusing on arts and culture in and around Philadelphia. Hosted by Tiffany Bacon and co-moderated by Jeffrey Page of the Philadelphia Theater Company. Part of The Source, Fridays at noon, exclusively on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on WURDradio.com, the WURD Radio app, or watch live on WURD TV via Facebook and YouTube. Sponsored by New Voices sponsor Comcast, NBC Universal, and Pico.
Between family dinners, bedtime stories, and study sessions, Pico knows that life never stops moving. So if your energy bills are adding up, Pico has programs available, like new payment options, flexible billing, and financial assistance to help you manage your bills and your budget for the essential energy you and your family need. Learn how Pico can help keep your life moving with payment arrangements. See if you qualify at pico.com/help.
Do you have what it tastes to solve Hearst Flavor Mix Mystery? One chip, 3 classic Hearst flavors, thousands of possible combinations. Pick up a bag of Hearst Flavor Mix Mystery and make your guess online today. Your guess could win you $10,000 and a year's supply of Hearst. Visit Hearst on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for more info on how to enter. Solve the mystery. Break out the Hearst. No purchase necessary. Legal residents of the 50 United States, DC, 18 years of age and older. Ends 8/31/21. To enter and for official rules, including odds and prize descriptions, visit campaign.rtm.com/Hearst Flavor Mix Mystery/ void where prohibited.
I would like to play a little tune I just composed not so long ago.
Hey family, do you like hearing the best jazz selections aired by 3 of the best jazz announcers in Philadelphia? Well, tune in to 96.1 FM,
96.1 FM,
and 900 AM, WURD Radio, independent black media for Freedom Sounds of Jazz.
Freedom Sounds of Jazz.
Hear Freedom Sounds of Jazz 10 p.m. Fridays with your hosts in rotation, Aquila, Jonathan Bay, and David Fritz. That's 10 p.m. Friday nights on WURD 96.1 FM and 900 AM, independent black
Join Nick Taliaferro Wednesday, July 21st at 5 p.m. for a very special simulcast conversation on WURD and WVON Radio in Chicago. Hosted by WURD's own Nick Taliaferro and WVON's Matt McGill and Kimberly Egoin on the impact of violence in Philadelphia and Chicago. That's Wednesday, July 21st at 5 p.m. exclusively on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com. Simulcast on WVON. Two of the only black-owned talk radio stations in the nation join forces for a powerful and timely conversation. This was brought to you by Einstein Healthcare Network. You're listening to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, independent black media.
And welcome back to Wake Up with Word with the brother Shamari, guest hosting today. And at 9 o'clock hour, y'all got to move out the way because Quaisa is going to take over our conversation about our future generation and what have we left to them. My question is, what is our inheritance that we've left them? I don't think it's much there, and I think that we're seeing the ramifications of their belief that we haven't left them a foundation from which to build. But that's a conversation that Quaisa is going to lead us in the 9 o'clock hour. Right now, and I'm going to do this real quick, I want to get in and get out of the way because I really want to hear Brothers Lynn and Brothers Butch really reflect on real basic. Attunement is to be in harmony with. Atonement is to be at one with. I don't think that you can do attunement or atonement without truth and trust, right? And so what we're building or rebuilding, hopefully, is truth and trust to get us to attunement and atonement. I contend, and I've heard you both say in your own ways, that when you don't do that, when you don't pay attention to it, it opens up the portals through which people, particularly your adversaries, can come in, create even bigger breaches and corrupt and co-opt your narrative. And then they have us literally chasing our tails around narratives that they can create for us at any time that distract us from attunement and atonement. Your thoughts about that, your reflections on that, both from a legal and a journalistic perspective, where the story is essential in both of those crafts. So I'm going to start with you, Lynn, and then sign off with you, Butch.
Well, it's important for us to tell our own story. I mean, that was one of the mottos of the first black newspaper, Freedom's Journal, when it came out in, it was 1827. And you're so right, Shamari, in terms of how these processes happen, not only locally, nationally, but globally, where others construct a narrative and then that becomes the dominant theme. There's supposedly this African proverb that says something to the effect, until lions have historians, the hunters will always be heroes. So, from a lion's point of view, if they don't tell their own story, someone else is going to tell it for them, and they're going to be, wild animals and killers, and, when they're just trying to be animals living in their own space. Mm-hmm. So it's very important for us to be able to tell our own story. And that leads to two things. One, the importance of ownership of media, like the WURD or like the Philadelphia Tribune, and also the responsibility of the public, in this instance the black public, to do what they can to inform themselves. Life 101 is hard. You don't have a lot of time to do a lot of things when you're just trying to, live and survive. Mm-hmm. But at the same token, I just kind of feel ignorance is excusable. So we need to do all that we can within what we can do to try to learn more every day.
Yeah, I've coined this term that some people get offended by, but I call it nignorance. And I believe that we are specializing in this thing called nignorance, and our nignorance is not blissful. There's a hell of a cost we're paying for it, and we need to just stop reveling in it at this point. But your thoughts on this atonement, attunement, and the role of trust and truth?
The story is the thing that justifies actions, Shamari. It's the story that gives you justification. And so that's why I said we got to come up with better stories. We got to come up with victorious stories. Again, Ed Robinson used to talk about this all the time. Dr. Ed Robinson, ancestor Ed Robinson used to talk about this all the time. We got to come up with better stories. Dr. John Henry Clark talked about education only has one purpose, and that is to teach people how to handle power. And we need to start teaching our children how to handle power. But we have to grab the power back, and the power begins with the story. And as you said, man, the attunement is that harmony. Any musician knows tune is the harmony. You want to be in harmony with the other players, right? But then the atonement is that one song that everybody is singing together. And if you don't take that, there is nothing else. Our very purpose is within our stories. We don't tell stories just to be telling stories. We'll tell stories because they give us purpose. They give us life. And when other people give us stories, we see what we see today. Right. We get death. We are getting death stories. From the music to the media, we are getting death stories. Right. But because we step back and we let other people call the shots on how we should do every damn thing. So we got to step back. We got to step back into the space that Black adults should have around telling our stories.
I'm going to ask each of you this, and I know you can only answer it, and I'm hoping we can create a space at a later time to really delve into this with the truth of your answers. Both of you have, from where you sat in different ways, have had a somewhat intimate connection with, for what I'm going to call right now, the MOVE story, right? Butch, from your role in attempts at reconciliation, Lynn, in your role as a journalist and maybe even as a lawyer. What, if you had to say right now, what's one truth that you know has gotten sacrificed in this story? And what do you think are the current day ramifications of the sacrifice, or at least the neglect of that truth, as this city narrates and talks about MOVE? I know it's a tough question to close out on, but I want to start with you, Butch, and then close out with you, Lynn.
Okay.
So what has been sacrificed, Shamari, is...
Well, what's the neglected truth first, and then tell me the cost of that sacrifice.
I think the neglected truth is that this is a bigger story than the story of the MOVE family alone. I think that there are more people that are impacted by the MOVE story. Everything seems to be focused on the MOVE family. And as long as it's there, it seems like nobody else can have anything to say about it or to add to it. A lot of people were impacted by what happened. A lot of people have something to add there. And the result of it being so focused there is that there is no extra Black community input that can help to reconcile what actually happened. We need more input, more truthful, honest input there. And not to be kept out of that story that so many other Black folks were impacted by.
Okay, appreciate that. And Glenn, your neglected truth and the ramifications of it being neglected.
Well, Butch is so right, and he's saying that so much of the MOVE story as it's come out has obscured larger issues in terms of other people who've been impacted by it, and the other Black people who have been impacted by it. One of the things that bothers me all the time with the MOVE story is how it is somehow divorced other contexts of institutional racism in the city. It's MOVE versus the police, but you forget that the police, it was the police versus the Black community, with MOVE just being one part of it. So we have to kind of like step back a little bit and try to see the forest and not get blinded by the trees.
I appreciate that. And I know for me, I've been, as we've done interviews, I've always talked about, sometimes when you have a name and they say the MOVE 9 or the 11 that died or Osage Avenue, the humanity gets taken out of the story. And so try to create space to really bring the humanity into the story. And when I say that, it's the good, the bad, and the ugly of the humanity, right? Like sometimes everybody becomes so stubborn that we don't understand that this is a very dynamic, multifaceted, multi-layered experience, both at the personal, individual storytelling level, family dynamics, family dynamics related to the community, and how that all relates to a global agenda of oppression and other things. And I think that at the end of the day, in many ways, in order to tell better stories, we got to stop being comfortable sacrificing the good, the bad, and the ugly truths that go with the story, because you can't get to the reconciliation or the atonement without the good, the bad, and the ugly truths. So I thank you, brothers, for joining us, and I thank you for kicking off what I'm hoping is a continual conversation, particularly around the role that we in Black media and Black storytellers have to begin to play as we want to move into trust, into truth, to get to attunement and atonement. I think it's a conversation that we in this field need to take a lot more seriously and then become a lot more accountable towards. So I thank you, good brothers, for joining us. We're coming up on the commercial break. When we come back, I'm handing over the helm, if you will, of the ship to my good sister Quasa as we converse about what inheritance, where is the inheritance that we have left for our children and young adults as they try to figure out and make their way into the future? Where is the wealth that they get to build upon? We'll talk with you after these messages.
Hey, WURD family, did you hear? It's official. The Colorectal Cancer Alliance just announced the new age for colon cancer screenings has been officially lowered to age 45 for everyone. If you are 45 or older, it's time to get screened. Go to WURDradio.com and click on the Go to Know banner to register for your free at-home screening test. Did you know colon cancer is largely preventable with on-time screening? And there's a 90% survival rate when caught early. African Americans are 20% more likely to get colon cancer and about 40% more likely to die from it than most other groups. So for the next 3 months, you can go to WURDradio.com and click on the Go to Know banner for your free at-home screening test. A screening navigator will contact you to ask a few questions and help you get screened. It's that simple. Again, just go to WURDradio.com, click on the Go to Know banner, and fill out the form to request your free at-home screening test. Go to Know today.
What's up, Philly? It's Sincerely Sarita. With so much uncertainty surrounding the upcoming school year, now is the time to take charge of your child's education and give them the tools to make learning fun and safe. Check out Commonwealth Charter Academy, which can make a difference in your child's life. Commonwealth Charter Academy, or CCA, is a K-12 public cyber charter school with nearly 20 years of experience providing a flexible, stable, online education in the comfort of your home. Enroll today at ccaeducate.me. Your child will receive 1. A world-class accredited education streamed directly into your home at no cost to you. 2. A laptop, headphones, assistance with accessing the internet, and learning materials, all provided at no cost to you. 3. A safe learning environment with no bullying or security concerns. Join the nearly 2,500 students from Philly who already attend CCA. The school year begins September 8th. Enroll now at ccaeducate.me.
You're never completely ready to adopt a teen.
For late nights writing English papers.
For your teen's music taste.
For dinners, where they talk more on their phone than with you.
For the first time, they call you Mom.
You're never completely ready to adopt a teen, and you can't imagine the reward.
To learn more about adopting a teen, visit adoptuskids.org.
Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Lifting every voice till earth and heaven ring. This is WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Black Talk Media. You're listening to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, independent Black media.
Welcome back. Welcome back. So good morning to everyone. The voice that you're hearing currently right now is Kawesa Mathis. I am the producer of Wake Up with Word. We are sitting in for Solomon Jones. He is on vacation, a much needed vacation. Brother Shamari is guest hosting the show. And, Brother Shamari, I just want to give you a shout out for just, opening up the floor to have this next conversation, as we're coming back here. I kind of want to switch gears a little bit, but of course we're still going to, make sure that we are, Afrocentric-centered in this conversation. And I want to talk about millennials, right? So I am a proud millennial, as a lot of you may know. And I want to have a real conversation about, just some of the issues that my generation and the other generations behind me are dealing with today. So I know a lot of folks are always kind of, talking about the fact that millennials are still teenagers, and a lot of us are, in our mid-30s, some of us pushing, 40s, and but my generation has been plagued with recessions and insurmountable amounts of student loan debt and home ownership crises, and most importantly, major wealth gap. And so we talk about racial disparities all the time here, on Wake Up. And I just kind of wanted to touch on some of those disparities just from an economic standpoint and how that impacts millennials here. So joining us to talk about it, we have a very special guest. Her name is Dr. Fenaba Otto. She is an associate professor of public policy at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and she joins us today to talk about her research, the millennial racial wealth gap. Dr. Otto, good morning to you. Thanks so much for joining us this morning on Wake Up with Word. How are you this morning?
I'm well. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you. So really just kind of kicking it off here, because I did take a look at your research, of course, ahead of this conversation, and I really wanted to set the scene for who holds the majority of wealth here in this country. Do you think that you might be able to break down those numbers, starting with the top 1% and the top 10% of the country?
Sure. So, the wealth distribution in our country is incredibly skewed, right? So when we say skewed, we mean that a small percentage of the population owns a significant portion of the wealth. So if you look at that 1%, that conversation that we're constantly seeing everywhere in the media, even, during the movement for against the 1%, they hold the largest percent, the largest share of wealth. And then if you move down the distribution, 5%, 20%, they are holding a majority of the wealth in our population. And so most households, or a significant proportion of households in our country, are at the lower ends of the wealth distribution, and Black populations in particular are overrepresented at the lower end, having zero or negative net worth. Wow. And so, when you're talking about that top kind of 10%, can you kind of tell us what the rest of the 90% of us are dealing with as far as wealth is concerned here in the country? Yeah, so I think if we look at data sources, we pull information from data sources that kind of collect information on household wealth. Pre-COVID, because, unfortunately, we're going to see an exacerbation of wealth inequality post-COVID, but pre-COVID, we could say like the median household held about just under $100,000, so around $97,000 worth, of net worth. And so just to define, like, net worth is the difference between the total value of people's assets and minus deducting their liabilities or their debts, right? So this is like the stock of debts that they hold in their household. So that's just under like $100,000. But when we disaggregate that, when we break that down by race, the numbers are significantly, different. And we see that Black households actually hold about 1/10 of the wealth of white households. So what we're talking about is that the typical Black household has around like $17,000 in net worth, and then with white households holding, over that median is around $170,000. And I'm giving you approximate numbers, but that's kind of what we're thinking about when we're looking at these numbers.
Wow, that's a very, very large gap that's there. So is it safe to say that, you know, the majority of the folks who are, you know, who have that wealth are white households? It's safe to say that, right?
Yeah, okay. It is safe to say that. Yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about here.
Wow. So can you maybe highlight for us maybe, you know, what some of the reasons are as to why, you know, Black folks have had difficulty obtaining wealth?
Sure. So, I mean, we like to think of it, or, you know, well, people that study wealth and wealth inequality like to look at historical legacies of inequality, policies. You know, we can go back, you know, many generations, tracing it back into our, you know, the histories of chattel slavery all the way through Reconstruction and Jim Crow, how there were policies that were set in place to kind of build a white middle class through home ownership in particular, but other ways through businesses and so forth, that were either targeted or explicitly denied Black households or Black families and Black communities, or attempts to kind of, when there were efforts to build wealth, to kind of tear those down. So we see, you know, we're on the anniversary of the Tulsa Massacre, so we see, you know, the Black Wall Street kind of example of how there was a prosperous Black community and it was completely wiped away. So we can look back historically, but we can also look to examples contemporary, you know, today. And you spoke to it in your introduction around how, you know, if we look at specific to the millennial cohort, how they have had to take on massive amounts of student debt in order to complete or to attend college and complete their college degrees, and even in pursuit of additional degrees, you know, graduate degrees as well. So we can also look at, you know, and even we look at credit markets and home ownership, how there are, you know, examples or mechanisms that are in place today that make it difficult for households to acquire assets and are also making them acquire massive amounts of debt. I should also say, you know, that we also know that a lot of wealth is passed on intergenerationally, right?
Right.
So white families that have accumulated a lot of wealth in the past are able to pass those on to their children, and they receive protection either through tax policies and different ways in order to ensure that those wealth are not diminished, right? And that they can continue to pass those along to their families and generate more wealth.
So go on, Shamar.
Yeah,
go on.
Can I ask a follow-up to that question?
Yeah.
Doctor, I'm wondering, you know, a lot of the legislation or the policies that you talk about, like the Black Codes, Jim Crow, were existing for our people as we came out of enslavement and into the early 1900s. And yet somehow we were still able to pass on land and wealth that's actually in many estimates of much greater value than the wealth our current generation is leaving for the young people who are coming behind us now. I'm wondering your thoughts about the role of increased consumption and needing to borrow and access credit to keep up with consumerism, and the role that might have played or be playing in our inability to pass down actual economically valuable assets and wealth to our children. Because somehow we figured out how to do that when the laws were even more stringent and more oppressive than the reality that we are in today. And I think that our excessive consumption might have something to do also with our inability to pass down wealth. Your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so I'll start by saying I think that there is a lot of evidence that the amount of consumption or the amount of spending that we have made doesn't account for a large percentage of the wealth gaps. You know, I think one of the things that we look to when we try to answer what's going on, especially with outflows within our, within our communities and within our households, is the decline of the social safety net within our society. So if households have experienced unemployment or have health shocks, you know, something that really is going to negatively impact the economic fragility of people's households, they really don't have support systems. And if your family or your familial networks don't have wealth as well that you can tap into, then it makes it really hard. So we turn to credit markets, we turn to acquiring debt in order to kind of support and kind of weather those bad, those bad turns, those unfortunate turns. I do think we live, I'm not going to deny that we live in a highly consumer-based society, but it is supported on a very fragile foundation of debt in particular, of debt and debt acquisition. So we see, the drive to, use that credit card to kind of, carry yourself over, or put it on your credit card. And you don't have to pay it all off now, but we know that can accumulate and has high fees. And if you mess up even just one payment, the effects are really high and negative. So yeah, you can't deny that that's not a very real reality and unfortunate repercussion for many who have had to deal with, unfortunate shocks to their income and their household, their household fragility. Mm-hmm.
Thanks for that. And in talking about credit and talking about just finances and wealth, you hinted at it a little bit earlier in regards to, Black students and student loans and things like that. And I've talked on, numerous occasions about, getting my degree and then just being in a great deal of debt because of that. And also because of not, just having the same access to educational funding and that generational wealth. And then I graduated, for me, and many millennials can speak to this, graduating in the middle of a recession. So can you kind of speak a little bit more? What did you find regarding millennials and secondary education, and what does that look like from the aspect of race in regards to the loan process?
Yeah, so you're speaking right to this, these contemporary, what we say, mechanisms for kind of perpetuating racial wealth inequality. What we find in our work is that, racial disparities in wealth, this huge difference between white and Black households is associated with Black households accumulating a lot more student debt when they go to college, right? And not only they're taking on more debt, they're acquiring more debt, and they're graduating with more debt. And even those who have not completed their degrees, they have a lot of debt as well. And when we see on the flip side of that, so an accumulation, but also struggles with repayment, right? So having a lot of debt and then not being able to pay it off as quickly as their white counterparts. And we can look to both mechanisms within the labor markets with, higher rates of unemployment and underemployment, as well as, not being able to receive help from your family if your family doesn't have the wealth. They may not have been able to, pay for all of college, but they can help you with some of your, your little payments that, to pay back, or, you can live with your parents while you're paying down your debt, or they can pay it off maybe and help you with a down payment on a house, right? So all these kinds of different mechanisms or flows that we see are more prevalent among white households are not showing up, or not to the same degree within Black households. And we see this kind of, loop of, previous, parental wealth contributing to debt accumulation, and the debt accumulation impeding the ability of millennials to start saving, and pay down that debt as fast. So we see these delays in transitions to acquiring home ownership. That's one of the the big outcomes that a lot of people look at, and other avenues as well. I looked at in some of my research marriage. So people putting off marriage or not transitioning into marriage as soon as others who have lower amounts of debt. And so we can look at different areas and kind of see how this is happening and how it is disproportionately impacting Black households and households of color.
Mm-hmm. And I know that Shamari, you have a follow-up question as well. Before we get into that, I did have another question in regards to, because I think that a lot of people don't even understand the fact that you're kind of hit with some of these issues right out the gate. When it comes to federal loans versus private loans. And you talked a lot about this, or a little bit about this in your research that I saw. And so can you kind of expand on that? Let our listening audience kind of know the difference between those federal loans and those private loans, and how we get that hang up there in the Black community when it comes to our wealth as well.
Yeah, so there is a difference. You can borrow from the federal government, or you can turn to private institutions, banks, to assist with paying for college. The issue being that, a should say that people often turn to the private markets if their loans that they receive, because there is a cap on the amount of loans that you can take from the federal government depending on your household income. And so if it's not enough, it may be enough to cover the fees and tuition, but you also have a lot of other fees for anyone who has attended post-secondary education. That there's a lot of other fees associated with going to college, food, housing, and so forth that you have to pay for, and sometimes the loans is not enough, and so we turn to private markets or we take on private loans. The issue being that the private loans don't have the same protections as federal loans, right? So if you run into issues, if you run into problems, you can't, it's highly unlikely that the private banks are going to be as willing to work with you, whereas the federal loans are protected by the federal government, and you can work out repayment plans with the federal government. You can put your loans in forbearance or defer them and sometimes, not incur as high fees. Whereas if you don't pay on those private loans, excuse me, you can't, you're still incurring fees. It's still accumulating interest over time. And those, they can just balloon, right? And so we see people, taking out private loans, and this also happens with federal loans, but to a lesser degree. But if you're not paying on them, your amount outstanding is growing larger than the principal, the amount that you originally took out, which can be really a really kind of hard place to be in, but also like mentally it can be even more, demoralizing, I should say, to a certain extent. So there's really are differences with the amount of protections that you have when you turn to the private markets versus the federal loans.
Wow.
Doctor, I'm wondering, and it's funny because Quasi kind of hit on the question that I was going to ask, but I'm going to expand it a little bit more because I don't know if I see you're in public policy. I don't know if your background is in economics or policy, but I'm wondering as you're answering, because oftentimes when we have economic conversations, people hear numbers and statistics and data. Can you also talk about the psychological, emotional ramifications of the financial or economic perspective of precarity that you're laying out? Because one of the reasons I was excited when Quasi wanted to have this conversation was, I don't think we put ourselves in the position of a young person who's just graduating from high school or just graduating from college in this context of COVID, and the difficulty they have looking and being able to project 3, 5, 10 years down the line, and the psychological impact that might have on their behavioral decisions today. And I think a lot of the fear, the violence, the anxiety that we're seeing in many of our urban neighborhoods is a result of the fact that our young people in particular can't really see themselves viably into the future 3, 5, 10 years from now. And I don't think we as a community, and you've said this a lot with the lack of parental wealth, among other things, I don't think we as a community and as a village have created a stable enough foundation to allay some of their fears. So can we just talk about some of the psychological nuances that go with these economic and financial indicators that you're laying out?
Wow, that was a great question. And it is something that I should say that I think that as academics and researchers that we don't think enough about. I think that, that being said, we do think about them in the context of, how our economic resources are impacting well-being. And I like how you phrase that about how it's very highly dependent on where you are in your life, right? If you're a young adult, if you're just finishing high school, and how that might change over the course or as you get older, and you either reflect back or thinking back. And I should say also it's highly dependent on the time period that you are experiencing, these events. So if we speak to the moment right now, like you were saying about COVID and not being able to project out, we think a lot about what are the primary, I guess I should say, primary mechanisms that have been kind of tried and true, or we think of as being tied with economic stability and economic security, and even, what that was really important for our communities, economic mobility, right? So not just being stable, but how do you get to achieving a little bit more, right? Building that wealth. And, unfortunately, when we look at post-secondary education, we look at college, in the past, yes, it still kind of delivers on, on that promise, but it is tied. There is risk associated with it, in particular financial risk, and that being for millennials, it's been a lot of debt. So, how do we kind of reconcile the idea that, one of the surest kind of forms of potential financial stability, economic security, and social mobility also has this attached risk to it is, I think, we got to provide information. But as you rightfully pointed out, I'm also situating myself in public policy, right, and thinking about how we can institute policies that are going to help our communities, help our families, so that we don't replicate what just happened or what is currently happening to families. So I think there can be individual efforts, and community efforts, but we also need policies and prescriptions to kind of address this massive wealth inequality within our society and, massive debt disparities that are being perpetuated by our higher education system. We can't do it alone. They have to work together. We need both from where I sit. Is that kind of addressing what you're thinking about?
Definitely. I just think I think that sometimes we're not cognizant as a village and as families that, we have a part to play in creating an economic foundation such that our young people and our young adults can at least have some sense of footing as they think about who they're going to be in the future. And I think that there are big costs that, because we haven't been intentional about that we're paying, because when young people are scared of their future, they make some pretty bad decisions.
Yeah, or it's just hard, like you said, to project out, to think longer term. We start to make decisions in the short term, and not really, taking a long view. And we want to believe, that we will be here for the long term, that we'll be here around for the long term. What do we want our community? What do we want our household and our families to be in the long term? And it's hard to think that far if we're just making short-term decisions for the short term. I definitely think that we, from a public policy perspective, I think that, we can think of ways that we can, bring wealth into our communities and find ways to kind of increase generational wealth within our societies. Unfortunately, a lot of the institutions that have, have been wealth generating for white households haven't been equivalently wealth generating for Black communities and Black households. Sometimes intentionally, but sometimes also because of the effects of racism and discrimination within those markets as well. Yeah.
Wow. Dr. Fenaba-Otto, I know that we are up at the break, so we do have to run, but I wanted to find out if you had a little bit of time to continue to stay with us on the other side, just to kind of talk about a few more things, because this conversation is quite fascinating, but I don't want to impose on your time. Do you have a little bit of time on the other side?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So I'll get you on a brief hold here. We're going to take a quick break. Make sure that you all keep it locked to WURD Radio 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURD. We will be right back on the other side. Take a listen, actually, at this commercial break.
Whatever the world brings, we're always moving forward. Reinventing business, reimagining home, and reemphasizing community. At PICO, we're redefining support, finding new ways to provide financial assistance, supporting opportunities for good jobs, and uplifting our communities. We're by your side through it all, because whatever the future holds, you're ready to take it on, and we're ready to power it. Find the support you need at pico.com.
It's time to break free from whatever screen you've been glued to for the past year. Backs up to get back to all the things you love about Philly. The city is ready for you. Go to ReadySetPhilly.com to plan your triumphant return.
Berger Montague is a Philadelphia-based plaintiffs' class action law firm committed to helping Philadelphia's Black community. Berger Montague maintains a strong commitment to fostering diversity and equity throughout the legal community and in society in general. In 2020, Berger Montague filed a pro bono case against the IRS when they refused to send COVID-19 stimulus checks to federal benefits recipients with dependent children. Thanks to Berger Montague, people across the United States were able to obtain dependent benefit checks that they desperately needed. Berger Montague supports WURD Radio and Philadelphia's Black community. For more information about Berger Montague Law Firm, please call 215-875-3033 or email at info@bm.net.
This is not a fad for us. We will not resume our regular programming when things die down. We're not black to help our bottom line or because it's politically correct. We're not joining a fight. This has been our fight, our message, our people. Black lives have always mattered here. We are undeniably, indefatigably, unapologetically, permanently Black Talk Media. WURD. You're listening to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, independent Black media.
Welcome back and Wake Up with WURD, y'all. We are back and indefatigably Black. I just wanted to say that. That's the only reason I wanted to come back and say those words. I like the way that sounds. We are back and indefatigably Black. And in this vein, Queen Quaisa, the queen of the morning show, the queen of Wake Up with WURD, is having a fascinating economic public policy dialogue about wealth and the role that the village and the family plays in the creation of an economic foundation through which our young people and our young adults can see themselves into the future and therefore make plans and decisions and have thoughts and projections based on that stability. But instead, right now, with COVID and racism and oppression, they're making those decisions from a place of precarity, and we're examining what impact that has on their decision-making as well as their sense of themselves and their sense of us vis-a-vis the future that we're handing to them. So Queen Quaisa, back to you. Such an exciting dialogue. I'm looking forward.
Well, welcome back, everybody, and thanks so much for really kind of tuning into this and really being dialed into the conversation. Thank you, Brother Shamari, for really just allowing for the conversation to be had. Dr. Fenaba Otto, she was with us on the other side. She decided to stay back with us, and we are going to bring her back into the conversation. She's an associate professor of public policy at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and she joins us today to talk about her research, the millennial racial wealth gap. Dr. Otto, thank you so very much for continuing to stay with us on the other side to really kind of dive in a little bit more, into this conversation. I still had so many questions, right, that I wanted to just kind of ask you, because I think the other part too is I want for people to get kind of the whole picture and really kind of understand just kind of how dire the situation is with Black millennials and also, the generation right ahead of us and the generation right behind us. And so one of my questions is, how does your research show how immigrants are dealing with that wealth gap, and how does that compare to what Black millennials are dealing with the wealth gap? Can you kind of talk to us about that?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me back. I think when we think about millennials and I think specifically to some of the work I did a couple years ago, and how they are situated, like you said, in contrast to previous generations. We see that a significant portion, especially look at the Latinx and Asian American populations, are overwhelmingly first generation or children of immigrants, right? So they are, and what that means is that a large percentage, because millennials are such a large proportion of our population, is that a growing number of our population are first gen, are coming from immigrant populations, are coming from outside the United States. But despite or in spite of these, growing variations within our ethnic composition within our society, we still see that Black Americans and Black households are still situated at the lower ends of the wealth distribution. So we find that again, talking in averages or, in the median, Latinx households their wealth tends to fall between Black Americans and white Americans. And among some Asian populations, among some households, their wealth holdings are actually surpassed white households. There are some Asian American populations that are just as wealth poor as Black households, or close to being as low wealth as Black households. But we're starting to see, increasing variations on where people fall based on their immigrant status and their ethnic composition. And so we, tend to look at, or as we look at these differences over time, who is evolving, who's able to move, the idea of economic mobility and social mobility, from upward, from the bottom up to the top, and who are falling or more likely to stay across generations. And so one thing that is consistent, you compare to previous generations, is that Black households and millennial households are at the lower ends of the wealth distribution, like their parents and like their grandparents before, with a Latinx populations kind of still close, still in between. I should say in between, depending on how you look at the data, where they fall. Are they a little bit? Sometimes they're a little bit closer to Black households, but still higher, and sometimes they kind of fit in the middle. They haven't really gotten that close to white households, but have seemed to pull away from Black households to a certain extent. So yeah, really fascinating when we think about how, demographically our populations have been changing over time as we look to younger and younger populations. But who is, if you want to be, think who is achieving the American dream, right? Or who is able to secure middle class status and who has not been able to secure that middle class status.
Wow. Yeah, and I think that, my other question, and I'm not sure if you were able to find this in what you researched, but I kind of want to know, why is it that, you have the Latinx community really, starting to move ahead of us in regards to, that financial wealth. I have, of course, some, ideas or opinions on it, but I don't know if you came across anything that kind of explained why they're ahead of Black folks when it comes to that financial equality.
Yeah, so I mean, there is some work that has looked at the role of home ownership. So a lot of Latinx households became new homeowners prior to the Great Recession, which happened around the 2007-2009, and were able to capitalize on that housing boom that was happening before. But then those neighborhoods also were impacted by the foreclosure crisis, right? So we saw this kind of, people, individuals that were able to gain access to housing, capitalizing off of that, but then also, not faring too well. But then also being able to rebound a little bit quicker than Black households in the labor market, for example. We also know that, there is what we say selection. People who come to the United States may be from the higher ends of their income and wealth distribution from the countries that they come from, right? So they're not necessarily always the people that you see on television for whom, are impoverished or coming as, refugee status, but actually a lot of them are coming as PhDs and engineers, and are bringing wealth with them. And there's also the self-employed small business route to wealth accumulation, that is concentrated among new immigrant populations in the United States as well. So there are lots of different, mechanisms through which it happens, but we also know that those have been mechanisms that have been difficult or denied Black American and Black populations within our society. So it all matters, right, for explaining the numbers that we see today. Yeah.
Right. And there's so much, intersection when we're talking about this and we're having this conversation. And so it's not, all just, well, I don't want to not have having a pun here, black and white. It's not all just one size fits all when it comes to talking about this conversation. I know that in more of your research, you kind of expanded on gender and race and kind of how that plays a part in millennials being hit exponentially harder, Black millennials, excuse me, when we're talking about this wealth gap. And so do you think that you can let the listening audience kind of know, some of maybe like the stats or just some of what you found when we're talking about race and gender, how, what happens when we're seeing how Black women are dealing with this gap and how Black men are dealing with this gap, and then, white men, white women, so on and so forth. Do you think you can kind of hit on that a little bit?
Yeah, so, the intersection or the gender wealth gap is something that's central to the work that I do. I'm a Black woman, so I have personal invested interest in understanding where are we and what are we doing and how are we faring. And some of the work that I've done in this area is showing that, we are going and pursuing higher education at some of the highest rates. But it's just not translating into the economic returns, right? We're not seeing the equivalent wealth accumulation. We're not seeing the equivalent income, that our white, female counterparts and white male counterparts have been able to secure to the same extent. And as these increased rates of us entering into these, these institutions is at a time when we're also seeing, increasing debt accumulation. So we're saddled with a lot of debt, or we're acquiring houses at a time when there was a housing crisis or a foreclosure crisis, right? Excuse me. So, it's really, really concerning that in attempts to kind of improve our economic position in our society, it's at a time when we're getting penalized for those choices, and just not seeing the same returns. So that's kind of what the work speaks to, but also, in comparison to those who have not pursued them, they have more wealth, they have more income as well. So, so it's a little bit nuanced in that we think, that it depends on who you're comparing it to. For those who have not been able to pursue college education, those are probably not faring as well, or those who pursued and have not completed their degrees. Right. Those are actually people who are struggling quite a bit. Yes. And so we want to be, mindful of those populations as well when we look at that work. And a lot of those are, they used to call them like non-traditional students, but there's a high concentration of Black women who fall into that category because they're moving in and out of the labor market, right? To go to school and complete their studies. They're attending these for-profit institutions that that are kind of, some of them can be quite predatory, and we want to be cognizant, aware of how those decisions, are impacting their long-term financial security. Yeah, okay. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I really just have one last question for you, because I do see that we're coming up on the break here. But and I thank you again for just being so gracious with your time. Thank you so much for that. If America continues to go down this same path, right? What do you foresee as far as the outcome being for closing that gap? Where do you see us in the future if we continue to kind of stay on trend?
Oh, it will not close. It will not close if we continue to do as we're doing. That's why the work that I do, I feel, is so important in raising alarm, or raising a piece of awareness that what we're doing is either letting the racial wealth gap persist, and maybe even increasing it and it's contributing to it growing. And so if we are concerned, if our goal is to close the wealth gap within our society, then we need to change what is doing. The status quo cannot continue. And I think, there has been a lot of efforts and a lot of attention to this, but we need action, right? We need we need not just attention, but we need action on the part. And so I think, hopefully we will either do a U-turn or kind of rethink. I think this is a great time for coming up with new ideas and innovating and thinking about what do we want our future to look like? What do we want the future to look like for our children? What do we want the future to look like, many years ahead? Because we see now what has happened, to the millennials. Right. They're unfortunately, if we want to be specific, there's a lot of research that has shown that, their economic state is not the same as their parents' generation when they were in their 30s and early 40s. So how do we make it so that the next generation, when they age into this part of their life, that they're in a better footing, right? That we're passing on something that will make them a little bit more secure for their families and their communities.
Wow. Thank you.
Without vision, people perish. And there's a common theme throughout our conversation that we have to have the vision that we want to bring into being for ourselves and for our children and for our future. And when you don't have that and other people have it for you, it tends not to work out in your best interest.
Yep, absolutely correct. Well, your research, Dr. Otto, is fascinating, and it just really speaks to what millennials are currently going through, and more specifically Black millennials. And I know that we covered a lot of ground, but it's really just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to just having this conversation and really talking about some of those different intersections that we are in fact dealing with. Where can people find your research, Dr. Otto?
You can, I would say you can Google me. I'm probably the only Fenaba Otto that I know of out here. But you can find me on the UNC website. You can add a webpage as well. So, yeah, you just Google Fenaba Otto, ADGO. I'm out here doing my work, Google Scholar, wherever. Yeah.
Right. Well, it's great work that you do. Thank you. It is great work that you do. Yeah. And I just want to thank you so much for just joining us today and giving us some insight on your work. That is Dr. Fenaba Otto. She is a public associate professor of public policy at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And she joined us today to talk about her research in the millennial racial wealth gap. Dr. Otto, have a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you again.
Thank you.
This has been great. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. We are going to go ahead and go to break here. Thanks so much for checking us out. Shamari's going to take it on the other side, but you have been listening to Wake Up with Word with Solomon Jones. Guest hosting is Brother Shamari. The voice you're hearing right now is Kawesa Mathis. I'm the producer of Wake Up with Word, but for right now, I want you all to keep it locked to 96.1 FM, 900 AM. We're going to go to commercial break, and we'll get right back to you on the other side.
What's up, Philly? It's Solomon. With so much uncertainty surrounding the upcoming school year, now is the time to take charge of your child's education and give them the tools to make learning fun and safe. Check out Commonwealth Charter Academy, which can make a difference in your child's life. Commonwealth Charter Academy, or CCA, is a K-12 public cyber charter school with nearly 20 years of experience providing a flexible, stable, online education in the comfort of your home. Enroll today at ccaeducate.me. Your child will receive 1. A world-class accredited education streamed directly into your home at no cost to you. 2. A laptop, headphones, assistance with accessing the internet, and learning materials all provided at no cost to you. 3. A safe learning environment with no bullying or security concerns. Join the nearly 2,500 students from Philly who already attend CCA. The school year begins September 8th. Enroll now at ccaeducate.me.
Hey, WURD family, did you hear? It's official. The Colorectal Cancer Alliance just announced the new age for colon cancer screenings has been officially lowered to age 45 for everyone. If you are 45 or older, it's time to get screened. Go to wordradio.com and click on the Go to Know banner to register for your free at-home screening test. Did you know colon cancer is largely preventable with on-time screening? And there's a 90% survival rate when caught early. African Americans are 20% more likely to get colon cancer and about 40% more likely to die from it than most other groups. So for the next 3 months, you can go to wordradio.com and click on the Go to Know banner for your free at-home screening test. A screening navigator will contact you to ask a few questions and help you get screened. It's that simple. Again, just go to wordradio.com, click on the Go to Know banner, and fill out the form to request your free at-home screening test. Go to Know today.
Morning, Mama. How you feeling?
Great, and I'm ready for you today.
I'm checking in on ya. Morning meditation?
Check.
Dressed and ready to work out?
Check.
Check your blood pressure yet?
And check.
Boom! Great job, Mom. And about those gold earrings?
No, ma'am.
Now more than ever, it's important that we protect our hearts and the hearts of those we love. Monitor your blood pressure daily and help each other stay motivated. Rally your squad to take the online pledge at releasethepressure.org. Brought to you by the Release the Pressure Coalition and the Ad Council.
Join Nick Taliaferro Wednesday, July 21st at 5 p.m. for a very special simulcast conversation on WURD and WVON Radio in Chicago. Hosted by WURD's own Nick Taliaferro and WVON's Matt McGill and Kimberly E. Goen on the impact of violence in Philadelphia and Chicago. That's Wednesday, July 21st at 5 p.m. exclusively on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com. Simulcast on WVON. Two of the only black-owned talk radio stations in the nation join forces for a powerful and timely conversation. This was brought to you by Einstein Healthcare Network. The WURD Radio newsletter, keeping you informed, engaged, and connected. Sign up by visiting wordradio.com. Scroll to the bottom of the page and type your email address under Connect with Us. You'll receive the latest information on WURD Radio, messages from our president and CEO, Sarah Lomax Reese, exclusive articles and multimedia content, and resources. Stay informed with the WURD Radio newsletter. You're listening to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, independent black media.
And welcome back to the final segment of a fast-moving show, Wake Up with WURD. And time flies when you start talking at 7 o'clock a.m., I guess. Great segment, Quasa, and just, I felt energized about the conversation today. I really feel like. And for the record, Quasa, can you pronounce and spell Dr. Ado's name, because some people on Facebook Live are really intrigued by her conversation and want to follow up, but I fear that they're spelling her name wrong, so I want them to find the right Dr. Ado.
Sure. I mean, I'll make sure that I put it in the Facebook chat as well. But Dr. Fenaba Ado, she works at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and so her name is spelled F like Frank, E. Oh, do you all have your pens and pencils? Okay. All right. Fenaba Ado, F like Frank, E like elephant, N like Nancy, A, B like boy, A, and then Ado, that's A, D like dog, D like dog, O. So Dr. Fenaba Ado, that's how you spell her name.
I see some of you are O-T-T-O. No, it's A-D-D-O. This is the black Ado. So I'm wondering, Quasa, your thoughts about what you hope to achieve in that conversation, what was on your mind, and then kind of where things landed. I thought it was a very informative, comprehensive. There's still so much more to uncover. I definitely want to invite her back on future conversations, because there's some real interesting dynamics even within what she shared that I want to explore. But I'm wondering, based on what you wanted our listening audience to hear, just your reflections on the conversation.
Yeah, for me, and I'm hoping that, for, any additional conversations, we, get a chance to kind of talk about maybe even what some solutions, might look like. But for me, the first part of the conversation was really just I wanted for our listeners to understand, like a lot of times, and this is I'm gonna be serious right here, because a lot of times the older generation is always telling millennials when they think we're still teenagers, pull yourself up by your bootstrap and just walk into a place and drop your resume, and you have to kind of tell them like, no, it doesn't work like that anymore. This is not how things go, and really kind of letting people understand the fact that it's not just about the fact that we're out here goofing off and not trying to excel. There have been a lot of burdens and a lot of things that have been plaguing our generation in particular, because of just what has transpired with our economy. And when you put on top of that the issue of race and the issue of disparities and the issue of wealth, it really, we're getting hit by all sides on it. And so I just really wanted to have a honest conversation based in fact, about some of the things that my generation is currently dealing with. And it's not just as easy as trying to call us lazy or say that we're not doing the work. A lot of us are putting the work in, but we can't even dig ourselves out of some of these holes.
Tell the truth, my sister, and the truth and trust and attunement and atonement. That's the way forward. Let's go to our final caller of the day. We got Barbara from West Philadelphia. Greetings.
Good morning, and thank you so much for all the programming this morning and for what you do on the community classroom, too. And I just wanted to share a resource that Larger Holes told me about, and that is the WBAI station in New York, Pacifico Radio, I think it is, and a lot of good, I think, and I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but information that they have, like you can get from on the ground of what's happening in different places, around the world as well as in the United States.
Okay.
And also with Dr. Addo. Since she's from University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, if you could call back, if you could have her back sometime, maybe to talk about what was happening there as far as Nicole Hannah-Jones and 1619 Project, and just teaching their period at this point.
Okay, that would be an interesting conversation. I appreciate that, Mama Barbara. And shout out to Mama Laura. It's funny, I said tell the truth. That's who I most associate that statement with. So it's cool that her name came up in this conversation. That's the ancestral Ashe right there. I appreciate that. We're about to close out our show, so I just want to, weave some history into the dialogue. I think that there was a moment coming out of our enslavement here when we had two schools of thoughts. And I think one school of thought doesn't get the right credit because other people came in, and they came in the middle of an internal division, and they narrated a different story. And that was a conversation between W.E.B. Du Bois, or represented by W.E.B. Du Bois, and Booker T. Washington. And Booker T. was essentially saying, look, y'all, we don't have no competitive advantage in this world over there where they're trying to get us to go to college. And he wasn't against going to college. He was essentially saying, let's play to where we have some strengths and some capacities and some competitive advantages, and let's build in that space before we go into a space where we're going to be foreign. We don't have skill set, we don't have lineage and legacy that we can build upon. And I think in 2021, you're hearing some of the ramifications of us turning that into an either or debate instead of a both and. And so in 1954, we were convinced to lay all of our self-help and Kuji down and to pursue integration or acculturation, what else do we call it? Accommodation. We wanted to get in and hope that they let us fit in. And I hope what you heard today was that there is a cost. Every investment, and if you're going to invest in something, you invest for the return on the investment. And there's a cost to the investment. And what I hope you heard today is that The cost of our investment in integration and acculturation and forsaking who we are and where we had our own strengths as a village, the cost of trading that in far exceed right now the return on that investment. And that is what happens when you run away from yourself and you allow yourself to be narrated for, narrated by, directed by. You allow policies to be created by other people. I don't care whether you call it a state of emergency, fiscal stimulus. I don't care whether you call it Brown versus Board of Education, the bell curve. When you allow other people's vision and the policies of that vision to dictate your story and your way forward all the time, without exception, the cost of investment will greatly exceed the return on the investment. And right now we're paying a price for our ignorance. I'll call it ignorance. Our path forward, truth, trust, attunement, and atonement, so we can actualize our own self-determination, our own will, and our own collective Black power. This brings to a close another edition of Wake Up with Word. And don't forget, coming up immediately after this is Reality Check with Charles Ellison. And if you want some more of what we do, check me out on Groundings, Evolutions, Elevations with Brother Shamari on Friday from 1 to 4 p.m. and again on Sundays from 6 to 8 p.m. right here at WURD Radio. Shout out to Queen Quasa. Excellent segment, excellent time. Talk to you all on Friday. Peace.